The moment Lena Carter's hands moved in sign language, every armed man in the room reached for their weapon. Adrian Voss, the city's most feared crime lord, a man who commanded empires with nothing but silence and a look, had just witnessed something impossible. Someone who could speak his language. Someone who wasn't afraid. In a world where power is everything and invisibility means survival, one waitress is about to discover that being seen by the wrong man might be the most dangerous thing she's ever done. This is the story of how courage became her currency and silence became her weapon. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The rain hit the pavement outside Élysée like bullets, sharp, relentless, unforgiving. Lena Carter stood at the service entrance, watching water cascade off the awning in sheets, her breath forming small clouds in the February cold. She was 20 minutes early for her shift, but that didn't matter. Being early meant she could grab the goods station, the one near the kitchen where the managers rarely checked, where she could move fast and efficient without someone watching her every move. She needed every dollar tonight. Every single one. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, another text from the hospital billing department. She didn't need to read it to know what it said. The number had grown so large it had stopped feeling real, like a fictional debt from someone else's life. Except it wasn't fictional, and it wasn't someone else's life. It was hers. It was her mother's life, measured in dollars she didn't have, and time she was running out of. Lena pushed through the heavy door, letting the warmth of the restaurant wrap around her like a promise it couldn't keep. The kitchen was already chaos, pans clattering, orders being shouted in 3 languages, the head chef screaming at someone about plating. She slipped past it all like a ghost, invisible in her black slacks and white shirt, her dark hair pulled back tight enough to give her a headache. "You're early." Marcus, the floor manager, appeared beside her with his tablet and his perpetual expression of mild disappointment. "Good. We're short tonight. Anna called in sick." "Again?" Lena grabbed her apron from her locker, tying it with practiced speed. "Third time this month, I'm giving you her section, the private rooms upstairs." Lena's hands froze on the apron strings. "The private rooms? Problem?" "Yes. The private rooms were where the city's elite came to conduct business they didn't want witnessed, where deals were made that would never see paper, where money changed hands in amounts that could buy buildings, or lives, or silence. Where people like Lena were expected to be invisible, to serve without seeing, to hear without listening. Where the wrong look at the wrong person could end a career, or worse. "No problem," she said. Marcus nodded, already moving on to his next crisis. "Table 7 first. They're expecting champagne at 8 sharp." Lena made her way upstairs, her footsteps silent on the plush carpet. Élysée wasn't just a restaurant. It was a temple to wealth and power, all soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers, art that cost more than most people's houses, and a wine list that read like a financial statement. She'd worked here for 2 years and still felt like an imposter every time she walked through the dining room. The private floor was quieter, more intimate. 6 rooms, each one designed for discretion, soundproofed walls, private entrances, staff that knew when to disappear. She'd only worked up here twice before, both times uneventful. Serve the food, pour the wine, collect the massive tip, and forget everything you saw. Table 7 was already occupied. Lena paused outside the door, checking her reflection in the polished brass plate. Professional, invisible, forgettable. She pushed open the door with a practiced smile. The room fell silent. 4 men sat around the table, all of them in suits that cost more than her yearly rent. But it wasn't the suits that made her heart skip. It was the tension. It stretched across the space like a wire pulled too tight, ready to snap. 3 of the men looked like corporate executives, polished, comfortable, in control. The 4th man sat at the head of the table, and everything about him was different. Adrian Voss. Lena recognized him immediately, though she'd never seen him in person. Everyone in the city knew Adrian Voss, even if only by reputation. The man who'd built an empire from nothing, who controlled half the commercial real estate in 3 states, whose name appeared in business journals and police reports with equal frequency. The man who never gave interviews, never made public appearances, never spoke. Because Adrian Voss couldn't speak. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair and features that would have been handsome if they weren't so carefully controlled. He wore a black suit that fit like it was made for him, which it probably was, and he sat with an absolute stillness that was somehow more commanding than any gesture. His eyes locked on her the moment she entered, and Lena felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "Good evening," she managed, her voice steady despite the sudden spike in her pulse. "I'm Lena. I'll be—" One of the executives waved a dismissive hand. "Champagne, the Krug. Don't bother with the whole speech." Lena nodded, moving to the bar cart in the corner. Her hands were steady as she retrieved the bottle, as she worked the cork free with a soft pop, as she poured 4 glasses with the precision of practice. She could feel Adrian's gaze following her, tracking her movements with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She served the 3 executives first, saving Adrian for last. As she approached, she noticed something the others had missed. His right hand was resting on the table, his fingers moving in small, deliberate patterns. Sign language. Lena's breath caught. Her brain processed what she was seeing before conscious thought could catch up. He was signing to himself, a habit she recognized from her own experience. Small gestures, almost unconscious, the way some people drummed their fingers or tapped their feet. She set his glass down carefully, and without thinking, without considering the consequences or the witnesses or the fact that she was about to do something incredibly stupid, her hands moved. "Thank you for your patience." Basic ASL, polite, professional. The room exploded into motion. All 3 executives lunged back from the table as if she'd pulled a weapon. One of them actually knocked over his chair. But Lena's attention was locked on Adrian, whose entire body had gone rigid, his eyes widening in something that looked like shock. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then Adrian's hand came up, slow and deliberate. "You know sign language." It wasn't a question. His fingers moved with fluid precision, the gestures of someone who'd been signing his entire life. "Yes," Lena signed back, aware that her hands were shaking now. "My younger brother is deaf." "Is?" His eyebrow raised slightly. "Was." The correction came automatically, along with the familiar ache. "He passed away 3 years ago." Something shifted in Adrian's expression, not quite sympathy, but understanding. Recognition of shared loss. "What the hell is happening?" one of the executives demanded, his voice sharp with confusion and barely concealed fear. "What is she doing?" Adrian's eyes never left Lena's face as his hands moved again. "They want to know what we're saying. Should I tell them?" "No." The sign was emphatic, almost playful. "Let them wonder." And then Adrian Voss did something Lena would later realize was extraordinary. He smiled. Not a big smile, just a slight curve of his lips, but it transformed his entire face, made him look human instead of untouchable. "Sir," another executive tried, his tone obsequious, "if there's a problem with the service—" Adrian raised one hand, a simple gesture that somehow commanded absolute silence. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and turned the screen toward the man. "The service is perfect. Leave us." The executive's face went white. "But the contracts—" Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Something cold and absolute. He typed again. "Now." The 3 men practically fell over themselves leaving. Lena stood frozen, still holding the champagne bottle, her mind racing through every possible outcome of this situation and landing on mostly terrible ones. When the door closed behind them, Adrian gestured to the chair one of the executives had vacated. "Sit." "I should—" Lena started to speak, then switched to signing. "I should get back to work." "You are working. Sit." It wasn't a request. Lena sat, setting the champagne bottle on the table with careful precision. Every instinct screamed at her to apologize, to explain, to make herself small and invisible again. But something about the way Adrian was looking at her made all of that impossible. "How long have you known ASL?" he asked. "Since I was 12. My brother was born deaf. I learned so we could talk. You're fluent. He was my best friend. We talked about everything." Adrian studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, "Everyone else here treats me like I'm either dangerous or broken. Which do you think I am?" The question was so direct it stole her breath. Lena met his eyes, seeing the challenge there, the test. In the span of a heartbeat, she made a choice that would change everything. I think you're neither. I think you're exactly as powerful as people say you are, and you don't need to speak to prove it. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. What's your full name? Lena Carter. And you work here how long? 2 years. 2 years, and this is the first time you've served this room. It wasn't a question, but Lena nodded anyway. Why? I'm usually downstairs. Someone called in sick. Lucky for me. His hands moved with a casual confidence that suggested he wasn't used to people disagreeing with him. Tell me, Lena Carter, why does a woman who signs like a native speaker work as a waitress at Élysée? The question was invasive, presumptuous, and delivered with such matter-of-fact directness that Lena found herself answering before she could think better of it. Medical bills. My mother is sick. Cancer. The treatment is expensive, and you're paying for it alone. Yes. No other family? Not anymore. Adrian was silent for a moment, his fingers still against the white tablecloth. When he signed again, his movements were slower, more deliberate. I'm going to make you an offer. You can refuse. I won't hold it against you, and there will be no consequences to your employment here. Do you understand? Lena's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. I understand. I need someone who can communicate with me in situations where using a phone or interpreter isn't practical. Someone intelligent, observant, and capable of discretion. Someone who can move through spaces without drawing attention. He paused, his dark eyes locked on hers. Someone who isn't afraid of me. Everyone is afraid of you, Lena signed before she could stop herself. Are you? She considered lying, considered the safe answer, the smart answer. Instead, she told the truth. Yes, but I'm more afraid of losing my mother. Adrian's smile returned slightly wider this time. Good. Fear with purpose is useful. Fear without it is just weakness. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Heavy stock, minimal design, just a phone number embossed in silver. This is my private line. If you're interested in the position, call tomorrow before noon. The salary is $200,000 per year, plus comprehensive medical coverage for you and your mother. Lena's hands went numb. $200,000. Her mother's treatment covered. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. What would I have to do? She managed to sign. Exactly what you did tonight. Be present, pay attention, communicate. And above all, he leaned forward slightly and Lena saw something in his expression that was both warning and promise. Never lie to me. I can handle almost anything except dishonesty. Can you do that? Lena thought about her mother in that hospital bed, about the collection notices piling up on her kitchen table, about the night she'd lain awake doing math that never worked out. She thought about her brother, who taught her that communication was about more than words, that connection could happen in silence. She thought about the fact that Adrian Voss was offering her a lifeline, and she had no idea what it would cost. I can do that, she signed. Then I'll expect your call. He stood, buttoning his jacket with smooth precision. Thank you for the champagne, Lena, and for seeing me instead of my reputation. He was at the door before she found her voice. Mr. Voss? He turned, one eyebrow raised in question. She switched back to signing. Why me? You must have dozens of people who can sign. I do. His hands moved with absolute certainty. But none of them had the courage to use it without being asked. Courage is rarer than skill, Lena. Don't forget that. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the private room with an empty champagne bottle and a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Lena sat there for 5 minutes, trying to process what had just happened, trying to convince herself it was real. The card was real enough. She could feel the texture of it between her fingers, see the number embossed on its surface. $200,000. Her mother's treatment covered. All she had to do was work for the most dangerous man in the city. Lena? Marcus's voice crackled through her radio. Table 7 clear? She stood on shaking legs, smoothing her apron. Clear. They left early. Did something happen? Everything, she thought. Everything just changed. No, she said. Everything was fine. She gathered the glasses, wiped down the table, reset the room for the next reservation. Professional. Invisible. Except she didn't feel invisible anymore. She felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She moved through the motions automatically, serving tables, taking orders, smiling at customers who looked through her like she was part of the furniture. But her mind was elsewhere, turning over Adrian's offer like a puzzle she couldn't solve. What did she really know about Adrian Voss? Only what everyone knew, that he'd built a commercial empire, that he had connections to everything from City Hall to the waterfront, that people who crossed him tended to disappear from public life, that he was brilliant, ruthless, and untouchable, and that he just offered her more money than she'd make in 5 years at Élysée. At midnight, when her shift ended, Lena stood in the employee locker room, staring at the business card. Her phone sat beside it on the bench, silent and accusing. One call. That's all it would take. One call, and her mother could get the treatment she needed. One call, and Lena could stop drowning in debt. One call, and she'd be working for a man who lived in shadows. "You coming, Lena?" Sarah, another waitress, called from the doorway. "A few of us are grabbing drinks, "Not tonight, I'm exhausted." Sarah studied her for a moment. "You okay? You've been weird all night." "Fine, just tired." After Sarah left, Lena pulled out her phone and dialed the hospital's nightline. They patched her through to her mother's floor, and after 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Mom, it's me. How are you feeling?" "Lena." Her mother's voice was weak but warm. "You shouldn't be calling so late. You need your sleep. I wanted to check on you. Did Dr. Morrison come by today?" A pause. Too long. "He did. And?" "We can talk about it tomorrow, sweetheart. It's late." "Mom, tell me." Another pause, and when her mother spoke again, Lena could hear the exhaustion in every word. "The current treatment isn't working as well as they hoped. He wants to try something new, but it's expensive, honey, more than we discussed." Lena closed her eyes. "How much more?" "It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. We always do." But they wouldn't. Lena had seen the numbers, done the math 1,000 times. They were out of options, out of time, out of miracles, unless she made her own. "I might have a solution," Lena said quietly. "A new job opportunity. Better pay. Better benefits." "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Where?" "I'll tell you about it tomorrow. Get some rest, okay? I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart." Lena ended the call and sat in the empty locker room, the business card warm in her palm. She thought about courage, about the moment she'd chosen to sign to Adrian instead of staying silent, about how one choice could change everything. She thought about her brother, who taught her that communication was power, that silence wasn't empty. It was full of meaning if you knew how to listen. She thought about the fear in those executives' eyes when she dared to speak Adrian's language. And she thought about Adrian himself, about the way he'd looked at her like she was real, like she mattered, like she was more than just the invisible woman serving champagne. At 12:47 a.m., Lena Carter made a decision that would either save her life or destroy it. She didn't make the call, not yet. That would wait for morning, when she could think clearly, when the weight of the night had lifted slightly. But she knew, sitting there in that empty room, that she was going to make it, that she was going to step into Adrian Voss's world and hope she was strong enough to survive it. Because courage, he'd said, was rarer than skill. And Lena Carter was discovering that she had more courage than she'd ever known. The next morning arrived too quickly. Lena barely slept, her mind spinning through scenarios and consequences, each one more daunting than the last. She made coffee in her tiny kitchen, watching the sun rise over the city through a window that looked out on brick walls and fire escapes. Her apartment was small, a studio in a building that had seen better decades. But it was hers. Or it would be, once she paid off another year of rent. The furniture was second-hand, the paint was peeling, and the radiator made sounds like it was trying to communicate with the dead, but it was home. She wondered if taking Adrian's offer would mean leaving it behind. Wondered what his world looked like, beyond the glimpses she'd caught in that private room. At 9:47 a.m., Lena picked up her phone. The number on the card was local. She dialed it with trembling fingers, half hoping it would go to voicemail, half terrified it would. It rang once. "Lena Carter." Adrian's voice came through the line, not signing, but actual speech. It was rougher than she'd expected, textured with an accent she couldn't quite place but clear enough. He could speak, he simply chose not to most of the time. I wondered if you'd call. She hadn't expected him to answer personally. I wanted to discuss your offer. Are you accepting it? Direct. No pleasantries, no negotiation, just the question that mattered. I need to understand what I'm accepting first. A pause, and she could almost see him smile. Smart. Meet me at the Harbor Building, 20th floor, 2 o'clock. Come alone. Mr. Voss. Adrian. And Lena? Wear something comfortable. Where we're going doesn't require formal attire. The line went dead. Lena stared at her phone, her heart racing. She'd expected an interview, maybe, or a formal meeting with lawyers and contracts, not an immediate summons to one of the city's most exclusive addresses. The Harbor Building was legendary, a gleaming tower on the waterfront where penthouses sold for 8 figures and the lobby had marble imported from Italy. Adrian owned the top 5 floors according to the business journals. His legitimate empire was run from those offices: real estate development, private equity, international trade. What happened on the other floors, the ones the journals didn't mention, was anybody's guess. Lena spent the next 4 hours in a state of controlled panic. She showered, changed 3 times, finally settling on dark jeans and a simple sweater, comfortable but presentable. She called the hospital to check on her mother, then called Elysee to request the evening off, citing a family emergency. Marcus sounded suspicious but approved it. She'd never called in sick, never asked for special treatment. She'd earned this much, at least. At 1:30, Lena stood outside the Harbor Building, craning her neck to look up at its glass and steel facade. Clouds reflected in its surface, making it look like it was part of the sky itself. The lobby was everything she'd imagined: soaring ceilings, contemporary art, security that was both visible and invisible. A woman at the front desk looked up as Lena entered, her expression professionally neutral. Name? Lena Carter. I have an appointment with Mr. Voss. The woman's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something that might have been surprise or curiosity. Of course. The private elevator is to your right, top floor. Lena's stomach dropped. Top floor. Of course it was the top floor. The elevator was all polished brass and mirrors. Lena avoided her reflection, focusing instead on the numbers climbing steadily upward. 15, 20, 25. The building had 30 floors, and with each passing level, she felt the weight of the decision she was making. The doors opened directly into a space that stole her breath. It wasn't an office, it was more like a modern apartment, all open floor plan and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city and harbor beyond. The furniture was minimal but expensive. The art on the walls was contemporary and striking, and the whole space felt designed for someone who valued aesthetics as much as function. Adrian stood by the windows, his back to her, hands in his pockets. He turned when she stepped out of the elevator, and she saw he'd taken his own advice. He wore jeans and a dark Henley, casual in a way that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. His hands moved in greeting. Welcome. Thank you for seeing me, Lena signed back, grateful for the familiar language. Did you think about my offer? I haven't thought about anything else. And? Lena took a breath, committing. I want to accept, but I need to know what I'm really agreeing to, what you really need from me. Adrian gestured to a seating area near the windows, low sofas arranged around a glass coffee table. As Lena sat, he remained standing, his expression thoughtful. I'm going to be honest with you, he signed. More honest than I've been with anyone in a long time. Can you handle that? I don't know. Try me. His smile was brief but genuine. I built my legitimate businesses through observation and silence. People underestimate silence. They fill it with their own assumptions, their own nervousness. They tell you things they wouldn't otherwise reveal simply because the quiet makes them uncomfortable. But there are situations where silence isn't enough, where I need someone who can communicate for me in real time, who can read a room the way I do, who can be my voice without being obvious about it. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. My world has 2 sides, Lena. One is completely legitimate: real estate, investments, international trade. That side is clean, legal, and scrutinized constantly. And the other side exists in the spaces between, Not illegal, but not entirely transparent either. Information brokerage, leverage, connections that don't appear on paper. Lena processed this, her mind working through the implications. You're telling me this because you need me to understand what I'm stepping into. Exactly. I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who sees both sides and doesn't flinch. Someone who can keep secrets that could destroy empires. That's a lot of trust to place in a waitress you met last night. Is it? Adrian sat down across from her, his gaze intense. You've been invisible for 2 years at Élysée, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. You've served powerful people, heard sensitive conversations, witnessed private moments. And not once has your name appeared in a gossip column or a business journal. Not once have you sold information or betrayed a confidence. How do you know that? Because I had you investigated the moment you walked out of that room last night. Lena's breath caught. She should have been angry, should have felt violated. Instead, she felt oddly respected. He'd done his due diligence, treated her like a potential asset rather than a disposable resource. What did you find? That you're exactly what you appear to be. No criminal record, no debts except medical bills, no vices, no complications. You work 3 jobs, visit your mother every other day, and spend what little free time you have volunteering at a community center teaching ASL to kids. He leaned back slightly. You're either the most boring person in the city or you're someone with genuine integrity. I'm betting on the latter. You could be wrong. I'm rarely wrong about people. It wasn't arrogance, just fact. So here's my offer, clearly stated, $200,000 per year, full medical coverage for you and your mother at the best facility in the state, a signing bonus of $50,000 to clear your immediate debts. In exchange, you work as my personal assistant and translator. You attend meetings, travel when necessary, and maintain absolute confidentiality about everything you see and hear. $50,000. Lena's mind reeled at the number. She could clear her mother's current bills, buy time for the new treatment, breathe for the first time in years. What's the catch? She signed. The catch is that once you're in my world, you're in it completely. There's no going back to being invisible. People will know you work for me, and that association comes with both benefits and risks. What kind of risks? Adrian's expression grew serious. I have enemies. Not many, but the ones I have are dangerous. By working for me, you become a potential target for people who want to hurt me. I can provide security, but I can't eliminate risk entirely. You're trying to scare me off. I'm trying to make sure you understand the stakes. This isn't just a job, Lena. It's a life change. She thought about that for a long moment, watching the city spread out below them. Thought about the life she'd been living, invisible, struggling, slowly drowning. Thought about courage being rarer than skill. Can I ask you something personal? She signed. You can ask. I may not answer. Why did you smile last night? When I signed to you? Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. When he finally did, his hands moved with unusual slowness, as if the signs themselves were difficult. Because most people who learn ASL do it out of obligation or professional necessity. It's a skill they acquire, not a language they love. But you... He paused. You signed to me the way people speak when they're talking to someone they care about, like it was natural, like you saw me as someone worth communicating with, not just someone to be accommodated. Your disability doesn't define you, no. But it shapes how people see me. You're one of the few who looked past it immediately. His smile returned, slight but real. That's rare. And rare is valuable. Lena felt something shift inside her. A recognition that this wasn't just about money or opportunity. It was about being seen, truly seen, for the first time since her brother died. I'll take the job, she signed. On one condition. Name it. If I ever feel like you're putting me in genuine danger, not calculated risk, but actual danger I can't handle, you let me walk away. No consequences, no retaliation. Adrian considered this, then nodded. Agreed. Though I'll do everything in my power to ensure that situation never arises. He stood, extending his hand. Lena stood as well, taking it. His grip was firm, warm, certain. Welcome to my world, Lena Carter, he said aloud, his rough voice carrying an edge of satisfaction. I think you're going to do very well here. As they shook hands, Lena looked past him to the city beyond the windows, the same city she'd always known. But suddenly, it looked different. fuller of possibilities, fuller of danger, fuller of life. She'd taken the first step into Adrian Voss's world, and there was no turning back now. The contract arrived by courier at 6 the next morning, 30 pages of legal language that essentially confirmed everything Adrian had promised. Lena sat at her tiny kitchen table, reading through provisions about salary, benefits, confidentiality, and termination clauses while her coffee went cold. Her new health insurance would begin immediately. The signing bonus would be deposited within 24 hours. She signed on page 30 with a hand that barely trembled. By noon, she'd given her notice at Élysée. Marcus looked stunned, then suspicious, then resigned. "Better opportunity?" he asked. "Much better," Lena confirmed, and left it at that. Her phone rang at 1:15 p.m. Adrian's number. "Your mother has been transferred to St. Catherine's Medical Center," he said without preamble. "Dr. Sarah Chen is the best oncologist in the state. She'll be overseeing the new treatment protocol starting tomorrow." Lena's throat tightened. "That fast?" "I don't see the point in waiting, do you?" "No, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't started working." There was a pause, then, "A car will pick you up tomorrow morning at 8. Wear something professional but comfortable. We have a full day ahead." The line went dead before she could respond. Lena spent the rest of the day in a daze visiting her mother at the new facility. Street. Catherine's was everything the previous hospital wasn't. Private rooms, attentive staff, equipment that looked like it belonged in the future rather than the past. Her mother cried when she saw it, and Lena held her hand, unable to explain exactly how this miracle had happened. "The new job has excellent benefits," she said, which was technically true. "You must be working for someone very important," her mother replied, studying her face with the particular insight only mothers possessed. "I am." "Are you safe, sweetheart?" Lena thought about Adrian's warning, about enemies and risks and the life she was stepping into. "I will be," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I promise." The car that arrived the next morning was a black Mercedes with windows tinted dark enough to make the interior invisible from outside. The driver was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a professional demeanor that suggested she was much more than just a chauffeur. "Ms. Carter? I'm Diana. I handle security and logistics for Mr. Voss." She opened the rear door with practiced efficiency. "He's waiting at the office." The drive to the Harbor building took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Diana didn't make small talk, which Lena appreciated. She spent the time trying to calm her racing heart, reminding herself that she'd chosen this. The courage was rarer than skill. Adrian's office occupied the entire 30th floor. Diana led her through a reception area where 2 assistants worked behind sleek desks, then down a hallway lined with contemporary art that probably cost more than most people's houses. They stopped at a set of double doors. "He's expecting you," Diana said, knocking once before opening the door. Adrian sat behind a massive desk of dark wood and steel, 3 monitors arranged in front of him, phone pressed to his ear. He gestured for Lena to enter, to sit, continuing his conversation without acknowledging her presence beyond that initial gesture. Except he wasn't speaking. He was listening, his expression neutral as someone on the other end talked. Occasionally he'd type something on his keyboard, and Lena realized he was using text-to-speech software to respond. The other person couldn't hear his actual voice, just the synthesized version coming through their line. After 2 minutes, he ended the call and looked at her properly. "Good morning," he signed. "Good morning," she signed back, settling into the chair across from his desk. He studied her for a moment, and she had the distinct impression she was being evaluated. Then he stood, coming around the desk to lean against it, arms crossed. "First lesson," he signed. "In this office, we communicate however is most efficient. Sometimes that's ASL, sometimes it's speaking aloud, sometimes it's written notes or text messages. The goal is clarity, not consistency. Understand?" Lena nodded. "Second lesson? I'm going to test you constantly. Not because I don't trust you, but because trust is something that has to be proven over time. I need to know how you think, how you react under pressure, whether you can be relied upon when situations become complicated." "Complicated how?" Adrian's smile was brief. "You'll see. Today, you shadow me. Watch, listen, learn. Don't speak unless I indicate you should. Don't react to anything you see or hear. Just observe." That's all? That's everything. Most people can't do it. They feel compelled to prove themselves, to demonstrate value through action. But sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is simply pay attention. He moved back to his desk, pressing a button on his phone. Diana, we're ready. The next 8 hours were a masterclass in controlled chaos. Adrian's world moved fast. Meetings stacked on top of meetings, phone calls interrupting video conferences, decisions being made in the spaces between conversations. Lena sat in the corner of his office or in conference rooms, watching him navigate everything with the calm precision of someone conducting an orchestra. What struck her most was how he used silence as a weapon. In a negotiation with developers over a waterfront property, he let them talk for 15 minutes straight, their nervousness growing with each passing moment of his quiet attention. When he finally responded, via text-to-speech, his terms were so precisely calculated they had no room to argue. In a meeting with his investment team, he listened to their quarterly projections without comment, then typed a single question that exposed a flaw in their entire strategy. They scrambled to recalculate while he waited, patient and unmovable. In a video call with international partners, he let technical difficulties create awkward silences, using that discomfort to extract concessions they probably hadn't planned to make. Lena watched it all, fascinated. This was power that didn't need to announce itself. It simply existed, absolute and certain. At 2 o'clock, Diana brought lunch, salads that looked like art installations. Adrian ate while reading reports, occasionally making notes in margins. Lena ate in silence, aware that this too was probably a test. "You're doing well?" He signed without looking up from his papers. "I haven't done anything." "Exactly. Most people can't resist the urge to fill silence with noise. You can. That's valuable." At 3:30, everything changed. Adrian's phone buzzed with a message that made his expression harden. He read it twice, then looked at Lena with an intensity that made her pulse spike. "We're going out," he signed. "Whatever happens, stay close to me. Don't speak. Don't react. Just watch." "Where are we going?" "To handle a complication." Diana drove them across the city to a neighborhood Lena recognized, waterfront warehouses that had been converted into high-end lofts and galleries. They pulled up to a building with no signage, just an address in brushed steel numbers. 2 men stood outside, both in suits that didn't quite hide the bulges of shoulder holsters. They straightened when Adrian emerged from the car, their expressions carefully neutral. "Mr. Voss," one of them said, "Mr. Chen is waiting inside." Adrian nodded, gesturing for Lena to follow. She did, her heart pounding, aware that Diana was behind them, one hand resting casually near her hip in a way that suggested she was armed. The interior was industrial chic, exposed brick, polished concrete floors, minimal furniture. A man in his 50s sat in a leather chair near tall windows, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He stood when they entered, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Adrian, thank you for coming." Adrian signed to Lena. "Thomas Chen. He owns 3 restaurants in the financial district and a shipping company that imports from Hong Kong. He's also invested in several of my real estate projects." Then he moved his hands where Chen could see them, signing and speaking simultaneously. "You said it was urgent." Chen's eyes flicked to Lena, curious. "And you brought company." "My assistant, she signs." Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact, brooking no discussion. "I see." Chen settled back into his chair, gesturing for them to sit. Adrian sat. Lena remained standing slightly behind him, positioned where she could see both men clearly. "I have a problem, Adrian. One I'm hoping you can help me solve." Adrian waited, saying nothing. "Someone has been asking questions about my shipping operations, specifically about certain containers that arrive from overseas. Questions that suggest they know more than they should." "Who?" "That's what I need you to find out. I've been discreet, but this person, whoever they are, has access to information that should be sealed. Customs documentation, shipping manifests, even some of my private correspondence." Adrian's expression remained neutral, but Lena saw his fingers drum once against his knee, a small tell that suggested calculation happening beneath the surface. "What do you want from me?" Adrian signed. "I want to know who it is and how to make them stop. I'll pay whatever your standard rate is for information acquisition." My standard rate is 50,000 plus expenses. Chen didn't blink. Done. I'll need access to your records. Everything related to the shipments in question. Of course. Chen pulled out a USB drive, setting it on the table between them. It's all here. Shipping logs, customs declarations, correspondence, everything. Adrian picked up the drive, turning it over in his hands. Then he signed something to Lena in quick, subtle movements. He's lying. This isn't everything. Watch his eyes when I push. Lena's breath caught, but she kept her expression neutral. Adrian spoke aloud, his rough voice carrying weight. And you're certain there's nothing in your operations that would invite legitimate investigation? Chen's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting I'm involved in something illegal? I'm suggesting that federal investigators don't pursue innocent targets. If someone is digging into your shipping company, they believe there's something worth finding. My business is completely legitimate. Then you have nothing to worry about. Adrian stood, pocketing the USB drive. I'll look into it. But Thomas, if I find that you've misrepresented the situation, our business relationship ends. Permanently. Something flickered across Chen's face. Fear, maybe, or calculation. I wouldn't lie to you, Adrian. We've known each other too long. We've done business together. That's not the same as knowing someone. The drive back was silent. Lena watched the city slide past the tinted windows, her mind racing. Diana's eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror occasionally, her expression unreadable. Finally, Adrian signed to her. What did you notice? Lena considered her words carefully. He was nervous, not just about the investigation, about something else. And when you mentioned federal investigators, he looked relieved for a split second, like you'd confirmed something he suspected but hadn't wanted to say aloud. Adrian's smile was approving. Very good. What else? The USB drive. He handed it over too easily. If it contained truly sensitive information, he would have made you sign something first. Non-disclosure, limited access, something. But he just gave it to you. Meaning? Meaning it's either incomplete, like you said, or it's bait. He wants you to find something specific. Excellent. Adrian settled back in his seat, looking satisfied. Chen is being investigated by a federal task force looking into import fraud. He knows this because someone tipped him off. Probably someone in customs he's been paying. What he doesn't know is whether the person asking questions is part of that task force or someone else entirely. And which is it? That's what we're going to find out. But first, you need to understand something about how my world works. He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. People like Chen exist in the gray areas. Their businesses are mostly legitimate, but they cut corners, make deals that don't appear on paper, pay for information and influence. They're not criminals in the traditional sense, but they're not entirely clean either. And when pressure comes, they look for someone like me to solve their problems. Because you have connections they don't. Because I have information they don't. Power isn't about what you do, Lena. It's about what you know and who owes you favors. And Chen owes you favors. Chen owes me his waterfront restaurant. I acquired the property when he was facing bankruptcy and sold it back to him at a significant discount. He's been paying that debt ever since, in various forms. Lena processed this. So you'll help him. I'll investigate his situation. Whether I help him depends on what I find. If he's genuinely being targeted unfairly, I'll intervene. If he's brought federal attention on himself through legitimate criminal activity, I'll let him face the consequences. Because you don't protect criminals. Because I don't protect stupid criminals. Smart ones don't get caught. Back at the harbor building, Adrian led her to a conference room with a wall of monitors and computer equipment that looked like it belonged in a tech startup. A young man in his 20s sat at the central console, headphones around his neck, multiple windows open on his screens. Lena, meet Marcus Wu. He handles information technology and cybersecurity. Marcus, this is Lena Carter, my new assistant. Marcus looked up, his expression brightening. The woman who signs. Diana told me. That's so cool. Adrian signed to Lena. Marcus is brilliant, but lacks any sense of professional boundaries. You'll get used to it. Marcus clearly didn't know ASL because he continued cheerfully, I've been trying to get Adrian to teach me sign language for years, but he says I talk too much already. An accurate assessment, Adrian signed and spoke simultaneously, tossing the USB drive to Marcus. I need you to analyze everything on this. Shipping manifests, customs documents, correspondence. I want to know what's missing, what's been altered, and whether there are any digital footprints indicating who's been accessing these files. Marcus caught the drive with practiced ease. How deep do you want me to go? All the way. If there's metadata, I want it. If there are deleted files, recover them. If someone's been clever enough to mask their access, I want to know how they did it. Give me 2 hours. Adrian nodded, then gestured for Lena to follow him back to his office. Once inside, he moved to the windows, looking out over the city as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. That, he signed, is what I deal with daily. People with problems they can't solve through conventional means. Sometimes those problems are legitimate. Sometimes they're not. My job is to determine which is which and act accordingly. And my job? Your job is to help me read people like Chen, to be present in meetings and tell me what you observe, to communicate for me when speaking would undermine my position, to be my eyes and ears in situations where I need absolute discretion. That seems like a lot of trust for someone you just hired. Adrian turned to face her. It is, which is why I'm going to tell you something I haven't told anyone outside my inner circle. He moved to his desk, opening a drawer and pulling out a leather-bound journal. He set it between them, opening to a page filled with neat handwriting. This is a record of every significant deal, favor, and information exchange I've conducted over the past 10 years. Every debt owed, every promise made, every leverage point acquired. If this information became public, my entire empire would collapse within a week. Lena stared at the journal, understanding the weight of what he was showing her. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand what you're protecting. This isn't just about keeping my schedule or translating in meetings. It's about safeguarding information that could destroy lives, including mine. You're testing me. I'm showing you what trust looks like in my world. It's not built on faith or hope. It's built on mutually assured destruction. If you betray me, I fall. But I've ensured that if I fall, I take enough people down with me that betrayal becomes suicide. He closed the journal, returning it to the drawer. That said, I don't believe you'll betray me. Do you know why? Lena shook her head. Because you have something most people in my world don't. A moral compass that actually points somewhere consistent. You're not interested in power for its own sake. You're not driven by greed or ambition. You're simply trying to save your mother and survive. That kind of straightforward motivation is rare and useful. Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk about Adrian Voss. Meet me at Brennan's Coffee on 5th Street tomorrow, 9 a.m. Come alone. This is about your mother's safety. Her blood went cold. Adrian noticed immediately. What is it? Lena hesitated for only a moment, then handed him her phone. His expression darkened as he read the message. This is interesting, he signed slowly. Interesting? Someone just threatened my mother. No, someone implied a threat to create urgency and fear. There's a difference. He read the message again. They knew you'd be working with me. They knew about your mother's medical situation, and they chose a very public location for the meeting, not somewhere isolated where they could actually cause harm. What does that mean? It means someone wants information about me and thinks you're vulnerable enough to provide it. They're testing whether they can turn you into an asset. Lena's hand shook slightly. What do I do? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his expression calculating. Then he met her eyes, and she saw something in them that might have been respect. You have a choice. Option 1, ignore the message. I'll have Diana increase security around your mother, and we'll investigate who sent this. You'll be safe, but we won't know who's interested in getting to me through you. And option 2, you go to the meeting, with a wire, with Diana nearby, and with my full support. We find out who's trying to recruit you, what they want, and how much they know. That sounds dangerous. It is, but it's also an opportunity. These people made a mistake by reaching out to you so soon. If you've been working for me for months, you might be tempted by their offer, but you've been here one day. You have no loyalty to me yet, no investment in my organization, which means your reaction to their approach will be genuine, and that authenticity is something we can use. Lena looked at the message again, her mind racing. Everything in her screamed to run, to refuse, to take the safe option. But she thought about what Adrian had said about courage being rare, about the choice she'd made to step into his world. If I do this, she signed carefully, I need to know that my mother will be protected. Completely. Whatever happens. You have my word. Diana will personally oversee her security. Armed guards, secure facility access, the works. No one will get within 100 feet of her without my knowledge. And if these people realize I'm working with you, if they think I'm setting them up, then we'll handle it, together. Adrian's hands moved with absolute certainty. But Lena, if you're going to refuse, do it now. Once we start down this path, there's no backing out without consequences. This was it. The moment where her new life truly began. Not when she'd signed the contract, not when she'd walked into his office. Right here, being asked to step into the dark and trust that someone would be there to catch her. She thought about her brother, about the conversations they'd had in silence, about how he'd never let fear stop him from living fully despite a world that wasn't built for him. She thought about her mother in that hospital bed, finally getting treatment that might actually save her life. She thought about being invisible for so long that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to matter. I'll do it, she signed. I'll go to the meeting. Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. I thought you might. Welcome to the deep end, Lena Carter. Let's see if you can swim. The wire was smaller than Lena expected, a tiny device that clipped beneath her collar, nearly invisible unless someone was looking for it. Marcus fitted it himself in a secure room on the 29th floor, his usual cheerfulness replaced by professional focus. It's voice-activated, he explained, adjusting the microphone. We'll hear everything in real time. If you need immediate extraction, say the word actually, twice in the same sentence. Diana will be inside the coffee shop within 30 seconds. And if they search me for a wire? They won't. This meeting is about recruitment, not interrogation. They want you comfortable, willing to talk. Searching you would undermine that. Marcus stepped back, checking his equipment. But just in case, the wire is shielded. It won't show up on standard detection equipment. Adrian stood by the door, watching the preparation with his characteristic stillness. He'd been quiet since Lena agreed to the meeting, his mind clearly working through scenarios and contingencies. Now he signed to her, Remember, you're nervous but curious. You want to know what they know about me, what they want from you. Don't volunteer information, make them work for it. And if they ask me to do something illegal, refuse, but don't be self-righteous about it. Be scared. Be someone who's in over her head and looking for a way out. His expression softened slightly, which isn't far from the truth. Lena touched the wire beneath her collar, feeling its weight despite its size. What if I mess this up? You won't. You've been reading people your entire life. It's how you survived being invisible for so long. Trust that instinct. The night before the meeting, Lena barely slept. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario. Who were these people? What did they want? And what would they do when they realized she had no intention of betraying Adrian? At 7 a.m., Diana arrived to drive her to St. Catherine's. The security around her mother had tripled overnight. 2 guards in the hallway, cameras at every entrance, a panic button installed in the room itself. Her mother noticed, of course. Sweetheart, this seems excessive for a hospital, she said when Lena arrived. What kind of company did you say you're working for? A security-conscious one. Lena kissed her forehead, trying to project calm she didn't feel. How are you feeling? Better, actually. Dr. Chen started the new treatment yesterday. She says the early indicators are promising. Her mother studied her face. You look tired. Are they working you too hard? Just adjusting to the new schedule. Lena held her hand, drawing strength from the familiar warmth. But it's worth it. Seeing you here, getting proper treatment, it's worth everything. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how we got so lucky, finding this opportunity. But I'm grateful. So grateful. Guilt twisted in Lena's stomach. Lucky wasn't the word for it. She'd made a deal with a man who lived in shadows, and now she was about to walk into a situation that could get her killed. But her mother was alive, was getting treatment, had hope for the first time in months. That had to be worth the risk. At 8:30, Diana drove her to 5th Street. Brennan's Coffee was a neighborhood institution, brick walls covered in local art, mismatched furniture, the smell of fresh roasted beans heavy in the air. The kind of place where freelancers worked on laptops and students studied for exams. Safe, public, unthreatening, which was exactly why they'd chosen it. "I'll be at the corner table," Diana said as Lena prepared to exit the car, reading a newspaper, drinking terrible coffee, and listening to every word. "You're not alone in there." Lena nodded, her throat too tight for words. She entered the coffee shop at exactly 9 a.m., ordering a latte she didn't want, scanning the room for anyone who looked out of place. A man in his 40s sat at a table near the window, wearing a charcoal suit that was just expensive enough to suggest corporate rather than government. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression confirmed this was her contact. She approached slowly, her heart hammering. "Are you the one who texted me?" "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming." His voice was smooth, professional, with a hint of Southern accent. "Please sit." Lena sat, wrapping her hands around the hot cup for something to anchor herself. "You mentioned my mother's safety. Was that a threat?" "Not at all. Quite the opposite, actually." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Robert Davidson. I work for a firm that specializes in corporate intelligence and risk assessment. We've been monitoring Adrian Voss for some time, and we noticed his recent association with you. I'm his assistant. I don't see how that's relevant to corporate intelligence." "It's relevant because we believe Mr. Voss is involved in activities that could put you, and by extension your mother, at considerable risk. We wanted to give you an opportunity to protect yourself." Lena let confusion show on her face. "I don't understand. Mr. Voss runs a real estate and investment company. What kind of risk are you talking about?" Davidson leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Ms. Carter, you seem like an intelligent woman who ended up in a difficult situation through no fault of her own. Your mother's illness, the medical bills, anyone would be desperate, but Adrian Voss isn't who he appears to be." "Then who is he?" "A man who's built an empire on information brokerage, leverage, and connections to some very questionable people. A man who uses his disability as a shield to avoid scrutiny while conducting business that ranges from ethically dubious to potentially criminal." Lena's hands tightened on her cup. In her ear, through the wire, she could hear Marcus's quiet breathing as he recorded every word. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "We have patterns, financial transactions that don't add up, meetings with known criminals, properties that serve as fronts for money laundering." Davidson pulled out a tablet, swiping through what looked like surveillance photos. Adrian entering buildings, shaking hands with men Lena didn't recognize, sitting in restaurants with people who looked distinctly uncomfortable. "What we don't have is someone on the inside who can confirm our suspicions." There it was, the pitch. "You want me to spy on him?" Lena kept her voice flat, trying for disbelief rather than anger. "We want you to protect yourself by documenting what you see. Meeting schedules, financial records, names of associates. Nothing that would put you in direct danger, just information that could help us build a case." "A case for what? Are you law enforcement?" Davidson's smile returned. "We work with several government agencies in an advisory capacity. If we can provide sufficient evidence of criminal activity, those agencies would take appropriate action." "And what happens to me when Adrian finds out I've been feeding you information? Because he will find out. Men like him always do." "That's why we're offering protection. A new identity, relocation assistance, financial support. Your mother's treatment would continue uninterrupted at a facility of your choosing. You'd be completely safe." Lena stared at him, letting the silence stretch. In the corner, she could see Diana's reflection in the window, apparently engrossed in her newspaper. "This sounds insane. I've worked for Mr. Voss for 2 days. Why would you think I'd betray him?" "Because you're not like the others in his organization. You have no history of criminal activity, no loyalty built over years of shared crimes. You're just someone trying to save her mother. And we can help you do that without compromising your integrity or your safety. By asking me to commit corporate espionage. By asking you to help bring a dangerous man to justice." Davidson's expression grew earnest, almost sympathetic. "Ms. Carter, I understand this is overwhelming. We're not asking for an answer today. Take some time, think about what kind of man you're really working for. Then call this number when you're ready to discuss details." He slid a business card across the table. Plain white, just a phone number, no name or company. Lena picked it up, studying it like it might contain hidden meaning. And if I refuse, then we'll continue our investigation through other means. But I'd strongly advise you to consider the risk you're taking by remaining associated with Adrian Voss. People close to him tend to end up either corrupted or collateral damage. I'd hate to see you become either. He stood, buttoning his jacket. Think about it. For your mother's sake, if not your own. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with her cooling latte and a business card that felt like a loaded gun. She sat there for 5 minutes, processing what had just happened. Then Diana appeared beside her, sliding into the chair Davidson had vacated. "Good work," she murmured. "Now, let's get you back to the office. Adrian will want a full debrief." The drive back was silent except for Marcus's voice through Diana's earpiece, confirming he'd captured everything. Lena stared out the window, watching the city slide past, her mind churning through implications and possibilities. Adrian was waiting in his office, along with Marcus and a woman Lena hadn't met before. Late 50s, silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that missed nothing. "Lena, this is Catherine Ross," Adrian signed. "She handles legal affairs and strategic analysis." "Catherine, Lena Carter." Catherine extended a hand. "I've heard good things. That was impressive work this morning." "I didn't do anything except listen." "Listening is doing something. Most people can't manage it." Catherine settled into a chair, pulling out a tablet. "Let's talk about Robert Davidson." Over the next hour, they dissected every aspect of the meeting. Marcus played back the recording, Catherine taking notes, Adrian listening with absolute focus. When it finished, he sat back, his expression thoughtful. "Robert Davidson doesn't exist," Catherine said, pulling up a screen on her tablet. "That name appears nowhere in corporate intelligence databases, government contractor lists, or private investigation firms. It's a cover identity." "So who is he really?" Lena asked. "That's what we need to determine. But the fact that he's using a false identity tells us several things. First, this isn't an official government investigation. Federal agents don't hide behind fake names when recruiting informants. Second, whoever he's working for has significant resources. That wire detection shielding Marcus mentioned? Davidson would have had access to equipment that could find it if he were legitimately worried about surveillance. He didn't use it because he wanted you to feel safe." Adrian signed, "Which means this was about assessment, not recruitment. They wanted to see how you'd react, whether you'd immediately run to me or try to play both sides." "And I did run to you," Lena said quietly, "which tells them you're either genuinely loyal or smart enough to pretend loyalty while planning betrayal." Adrian's smile was thin. "We need to determine which they believe." "How do we do that?" Catherine looked at Adrian, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then he signed, "We call Davidson back. Tell him you're interested but scared. Set up another meeting. This time we control the location and the parameters." "You want me to pretend I'm willing to spy on you?" "I want you to see how far they'll go to recruit you, what they're really after, because I don't believe this is about bringing me to justice. There are easier targets if that's their goal. This is about something specific, and I need to know what." Lena thought about Davidson's face, his smooth assurances, the way he'd framed everything as protecting her. He mentioned financial records and meeting schedules. What if he's after something you're currently working on? Like the Chen situation, Marcus offered. If someone's investigating Chen's shipping company, they might think you're helping him cover it up. Adrian shook his head. "Chen is small time, not worth this level of effort." He stood, moving to the windows. "No, this is bigger. Someone wants to know what I know, who I'm connected to, what leverage I hold. They're using you to get that access." "Then I won't do it. I'll refuse to meet him again." "That's one option, but it leaves us blind to who's targeting me and why." Adrian turned to face her. "However, I won't ask you to take a risk you're not comfortable with. This is your choice, Lena. No pressure, no judgment." But there was pressure. The pressure of knowing that refusing might leave Adrian vulnerable, might leave her own position uncertain. The pressure of realizing that in just 2 days, she'd become invested in his world in ways she hadn't anticipated. "What would the next meeting look like?" she asked carefully. Catherine answered, "We'd set it up somewhere we control. A restaurant maybe, or a hotel lobby. Somewhere with good sight lines and multiple exits. You tell Davidson you need proof that Adrian is actually doing something illegal before you'll help. Make him show his cards." And if he has real evidence of criminal activity, then we deal with it. Adrian's hands moved with absolute certainty. But I don't believe he does. If he had hard evidence, he wouldn't need you. This is a fishing expedition. Lena looked at each of them. Catherine with her analytical calm, Marcus with his technical brilliance, Diana who'd positioned herself near the door like a guardian, and Adrian who stood at the center of it all, commanding loyalty without demanding it. "All right," she signed, "I'll make the call. But I need to know something first." "Ask. Is there anything in your business dealings that's actually illegal? Not ethically gray, not technically questionable, actually illegal?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he signed, "Do you want the comfortable answer or the honest one?" "The honest one. There are aspects of my information network that operate in legal gray areas. I pay for access to databases that aren't technically public. I leverage connections with people who have, let's say, complicated relationships with the law. I've made deals that wouldn't survive scrutiny from a hostile prosecutor." He paused. "But I don't traffic in drugs, weapons, or human beings. I don't launder money for cartels. I don't order violence against my enemies. My empire is built on information and influence, not crime. But some of what you do could be prosecuted as crime if someone wanted to badly enough. Yes, which is why I'm very careful about who I trust and what evidence exists." Lena absorbed this, understanding that she was being given a choice with full knowledge of the stakes. "Then let's find out who wants to take you down and why." The call to Davidson happened 3 hours later from a burner phone Marcus provided. Lena sat in the conference room, her hands steady despite her racing heart, as Catherine coached her through the script they'd developed. Davidson answered on the second ring. "Miss Carter, I hoped you'd call. I've been thinking about what you said, about the risk I'm taking." Lena kept her voice uncertain, nervous. "But I need to see proof, real proof that Mr. Voss is doing something illegal. I can't betray someone based on suspicions." A pause. "That's fair. What kind of proof would you need?" "Financial records, something concrete that shows illegal activity. And I want to know who you're really working for. No more vague references to government agencies." "Those are reasonable requests. Let's meet again, somewhere more private this time. I can show you documentation that will convince you we're on the right side of this." "Where?" "There's a restaurant called The Mill on West Side Avenue. Quiet, discreet, good for conversation. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m.? Lena looked at Catherine, who nodded. The Mill was perfect, a place they could control. "All right, 7 p.m. But if I'm not convinced by what you show me, this conversation ends." "Understood. Thank you, Ms. Carter. You're making the right choice." The line went dead. Lena set down the phone, her hands shaking now that the performance was over. "He bought it." "Of course he did," Adrian signed. "You were perfect, scared but principled, exactly what he expected." "Now what?" "Now we prepare. Catherine will have our people at the mill an hour before you arrive. Marcus will have surveillance in place. Diana will be your server." Adrian moved closer, his expression serious. "And I'll be in the kitchen, listening to every word." "You're going to be there? Did you think I'd send you alone into a potential trap?" His hands moved with something that might have been amusement. "I protect my assets, Lena, especially ones brave enough to walk into darkness without knowing what's waiting." The next day passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus ran Lena through scenarios, teaching her how to keep Davidson talking, how to redirect if he asked questions she couldn't answer. Catherine briefed her on what to look for in the documents Davidson might show, signs of fabrication, inconsistencies, anything that would reveal his true agenda. Adrian watched it all, occasionally offering guidance, but mostly letting his team work. Lena realized this was how he operated, surrounding himself with competent people and trusting them to execute without micromanagement. At 6 p.m., Diana helped her dress for the meeting. Nothing too formal, nothing that suggested she was anything but a nervous assistant in over her head. Dark jeans, a simple blouse, minimal makeup. "Remember," Diana said as she fitted the new wire, "if anything feels wrong, use the safe word. Pride isn't worth your life." "What if he brings backup? What if this is more than just showing me documents?" "Then you'll have 3 armed professionals within 15 feet of you at all times. But I don't think it will come to that. Davidson wants you willing, not coerced. Violence would undermine everything he's built." The drive to the mill was quiet. Lena watched the city darken, streetlights flickering on, people heading home from work or out for the evening. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the games being played in shadows around them. She used to be one of those people. Now she was something else entirely. The mill was exactly as advertised, upscale but understated, the kind of place where business deals happened over wine and professionally plated entrees. Catherine sat at the bar, apparently waiting for a date who was running late. Marcus was somewhere in the building, monitoring feeds from cameras he'd installed that afternoon, and Adrian was in the kitchen, having convinced the owner to let him observe through a service window. Davidson was already there when Lena arrived, sitting at a corner booth with a leather portfolio on the table. He stood when he saw her, that same professional smile in place. "Ms. Carter, thank you for coming." He waited until she'd slid into the booth before sitting again. "I appreciate that you want transparency. It shows good judgment. It shows self-preservation," Lena countered. "I'm not going to destroy my life based on someone's word." "Fair enough." Davidson opened the portfolio, pulling out several documents. "Let's start with financial records. These show transactions between Adrian Voss's holding companies and several offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, amounts ranging from $50,000 to $500,000, with no clear business purpose." Lena studied the papers, recognizing some of the company names from Adrian's files. The transactions looked legitimate on the surface, wire transfers with proper documentation, but something felt off about the account numbers. "These could be anything," she said. "Investment transfers, international payments, legitimate business expenses. They could be, but combined with these," Davidson pulled out more documents, "they paint a different picture. These are communications between Voss and a man named Victor Constantine, who's currently under investigation for arms trafficking in Eastern Europe." Lena's blood ran cold. Arms trafficking. That was far beyond gray areas or information brokerage. In her ear, through the wire, she heard Adrian's voice whisper, "Those documents are fabricated. Check the dates against my travel schedule. I was in New York during 3 of those supposed meetings." She took a breath, steadying herself. When were these communications sent? Davidson checked the documents. Various dates over the past 6 months. Why? "Because I'd need to verify them against Mr. Voss's actual schedule before believing he met with this person. For all I know, you created these yourself." Something flickered in Davidson's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "You're more suspicious than I expected. I'm thorough. Show me something verifiable, something I can confirm independently." Davidson sat back, studying her. "You're protecting him. Even now, presented with evidence of serious criminal activity, your instinct is to defend him. Why?" "Because I don't know you. For all I know, you're a competitor trying to destroy his business or someone with a personal grudge. Why should I trust you over the man who's actually helping my mother?" "Because eventually you'll be caught up in whatever crimes he's committing. And when that happens, no amount of medical coverage will protect you from federal prison." The words hit hard, designed to scare. And they did scare her, because there was truth in them. If Adrian was involved in something truly illegal, association with him could destroy her life. But these documents felt wrong, too convenient, too perfectly damning. "I need to think about this," Lena said, gathering the papers. "Can I keep these? Review them properly?" Davidson hesitated. "Those are sensitive documents." "Then make copies. Because I'm not making a decision based on a 10-minute conversation in a restaurant." After a long moment, Davidson nodded. "All right, I'll have copies sent to you, but Ms. Carter, time is a factor here. The investigation into Voss is accelerating. If you want protection, you need to commit soon." "How soon?" 72 hours. After that, whatever happens, happens. And I can't guarantee your safety if you're still associated with him when things go down." Lena stood, her legs steady, despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "I'll give you my answer in 3 days. But if I find out these documents are fake, this conversation is over." She walked out of the mill without looking back, aware that Diana was following at a discreet distance, that Catherine had already paid her bar tab and was heading for the exit, that Marcus was probably already analyzing everything that had been said, and that Adrian had heard every word, was processing it all with that brilliant, calculating mind. The car was waiting. Lena climbed in and Diana pulled away from the curb smoothly. Well done. You didn't give him anything he could use. He gave me documents claiming Adrian is connected to an arms dealer. He gave you fabricated evidence designed to make you panic. There's a difference. Back at the Harbor building, Adrian's office was lit up like a command center. Marcus had multiple screens running, Catherine was on the phone with someone, and Adrian stood at the windows, his expression unreadable. When Lena entered, he turned, his hands moving. You handled that perfectly. He showed me documents about you and someone named Victor Constantine. I've never heard of Victor Constantine. Marcus, run that name. Marcus was already typing. Victor Constantine, age 47, Ukrainian national, currently wanted by Interpol for weapons trafficking and money laundering. Based in Kiev, no known connections to the United States. He pulled up a photo, a man with sharp features and cold eyes. You've never met this person? Never. And those dates Davidson mentioned, I was nowhere near those locations. This is a fabrication, but a sophisticated one. Catherine finished her call, turning to the group. I have contacts in federal law enforcement. No one has an active investigation into Adrian Voss. No task forces, no grand juries, no surveillance warrants. Whatever Davidson is doing, it's not government sanctioned. Then who is he working for? Lena asked. Adrian's expression grew thoughtful. Someone who wants to know what I know about something specific. Someone willing to fabricate federal evidence to get it. Someone with resources and patience. He paused. Someone threatened by information I possess. The Chen situation? Marcus offered. Possibly, or something else entirely. Adrian looked at Lena. You bought us 3 days. We need to use them to figure out what Davidson is really after, and who's funding him. Lena sank into a chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. 2 days ago, she'd been serving champagne and trying to disappear. Now she was in the middle of industrial espionage, fabricated evidence, and threats against a man who'd somehow become more than just her employer. What happens in 3 days? She asked quietly. Adrian's hands moved slowly, deliberately. In 3 days, you tell Davidson you need more proof. And while he's scrambling to provide it, we find out who he really is and what they actually want. Then we decide how to make them regret threatening my people. The word my people settled over Lena like a promise and a warning. She was his people now, protected, valued, and completely caught up in whatever storm was coming. Marcus found the connection at 3 a.m. Lena had gone home hours earlier, Diana escorting her to ensure no one followed. But she couldn't sleep, couldn't stop her mind from replaying Davidson's words, the fabricated documents, the implications of what was happening. At 2:47 a.m., her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. We found something, come back. The Harbor building looked different at night, darker, emptier, like a monument to ambition sleeping until dawn. But Adrian's floor blazed with light, and when Lena stepped off the elevator, she found the team assembled around Marcus's workstation, their faces illuminated by screens filled with data. Adrian looked up when she entered, his expression carrying a weight she hadn't seen before. He signed, We know who Davidson is working for, and it's worse than we thought. Marcus spun his chair around, his usual cheerfulness replaced by grim focus. I ran facial recognition on Davidson using the footage from the mill. His real name is Robert Dalton, former CIA operative, now freelance corporate intelligence. He's worked for 3 different Fortune 500 companies in the past 2 years, all investigating competitors for leverage or buyout purposes. Who's he working for now? Lena asked. Catherine pulled up a document on the main screen, a corporate structure chart showing a web of holding companies and subsidiaries, a firm called Meridian Strategic Advisors. On paper, they're a consulting group. In reality, they're a front for James Holloway. The name meant nothing to Lena, but she saw Adrian's hands tighten into fists. Who's James Holloway? She asked. Adrian's signs were sharp, controlled anger barely contained. A man I destroyed 5 years ago. He ran a development company that specialized in waterfront properties. Beautiful proposals, investor presentations that promised the world, except the projects never quite materialized as advertised. Buildings were shoddily constructed, safety standards ignored, and when people started asking questions, he'd blame contractors and walk away with his profits intact. What happened? I acquired documentation proving he'd knowingly approved substandard materials in a residential tower. I made sure that information reached the right journalists, the right investigators, the right people who could bury him. Adrian's expression was cold. He lost everything. His company, his reputation, his freedom for 18 months when the criminal charges stuck. And now he wants revenge, Lena said quietly. Now he wants to know what other information I have, what other leverage I used, who else I've destroyed. He's using you to map my entire network, to understand my methods, to find vulnerabilities he can exploit. Marcus pulled up another screen showing financial transactions. Meridian Strategic has been funding Dalton's operation for 6 months. They've spent nearly $2 million investigating Adrian, surveillance, document analysis, informant recruitment. This isn't casual revenge. This is systematic dismantling. Lena felt ice settle in her stomach. What does he want? If he has all this information, why not just use it? Because he doesn't have the right information, Catherine explained. He has fragments, patterns, suspicions. What he needs is the actual evidence, the files Adrian keeps, the records of every deal and leverage point. With that, he could either blackmail Adrian into silence or release it all publicly and watch the empire collapse. The journal, Lena said, remembering what Adrian had shown her on her first day. He wants that journal. Adrian nodded slowly. Among other things, but more than that, he wants to know how I operate, who my sources are, what methods I use. He wants to become me, to build his own empire on the ruins of mine. Then we don't give him anything, Lena said. I tell Dalton I'm not interested, and we cut contact completely. That won't stop him. He'll find another way in, another vulnerability to exploit. We need to end this permanently. Adrian moved to the windows, looking out over the sleeping city. Which means we need to give him exactly what he wants, but on our terms. The room fell silent. Lena watched Adrian's reflection in the glass, seeing the calculation happening behind his eyes. You want to feed him false information, she said. I want to feed him a trap. Something so valuable he can't resist, something that will expose him when he tries to use it. Adrian turned back to the group. Marcus, can you create a convincing duplicate of my records? Something that looks authentic but contains traceable markers? Marcus's eyes lit up with the challenge. Absolutely. I can embed digital signatures that would expose anyone who tries to access or distribute the files. Make it look like the real thing while being completely trackable. Catherine, I need you to identify Holloway's current assets and vulnerabilities. If we're going to destroy him again, I want to be thorough this time. Already on it, Catherine said, her fingers flying across her tablet. He's rebuilt some of his fortune through shell companies and offshore investments, but he's been careful to keep his name off official documents. We'll need to trace the money carefully. Adrian's hands moved to Lena. And you need to convince Dalton that you're ready to betray me, that the evidence he showed you was enough to scare you into cooperation. Lena's throat tightened. How do I make that convincing? By telling him a truth wrapped in a lie. Tell him you discovered I keep extensive records of leverage and deals. Tell him you're terrified of being caught up in whatever investigation is coming. Tell him you want protection for yourself and your mother. But you need guarantees before you'll provide anything. And then? Then you offer him the duplicate files. But you set conditions. The exchange happens on your terms, in a location you specify, with proof of the protection agreement in hand. We control every aspect of the handoff. Oh, what happens when he realizes the files are fake? Adrian's smile was cold. He won't realize immediately. The duplicates will be good enough to pass initial inspection. By the time he discovers the deception, we'll have traced everyone he shares them with, documented his attempted blackmail, and gathered enough evidence to destroy him legally and professionally. Again, Lena looked around the room at their faces, Marcus eager and focused, Catherine calculating and precise, Diana standing near the door like a sentinel. These people were willing to go to war for Adrian, to risk everything to protect what he'd built, and they were asking her to be the weapon. What if something goes wrong? She asked. What if Dalton suspects it's a trap? Then Diana extracts you and we fall back to defensive positions. But I don't think it will come to that. Dalton has spent 6 months building this operation. He's invested too much to walk away now, especially when success is within reach. He'll think he's won, Lena said, understanding dawning. He'll think I cracked under pressure and betrayed you. Exactly, and that certainty will make him reckless. People make mistakes when they think they've already won. Lena thought about her mother, safe at St. Catherine's with armed guards outside her door. Thought about the life she'd stepped into just days ago. how everything had changed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Thought about Adrian offering her not just a job, but a place in his world, treating her like someone who mattered. How long do we have to prepare? 48 hours before you're supposed to give Dalton your answer. We use that time to build the trap perfectly. Adrian moved closer, his expression serious. But Lena, once we start this, there's no backing out. Dalton will believe you've betrayed me, which means if the plan fails, you become his asset for real, or his target. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't like the meeting at the mill. This is active deception of someone who's already proven willing to fabricate federal evidence. If he discovers what we're doing before we're ready, the consequences could be severe. Lena met his eyes, seeing genuine concern there beneath the calculation. You asked me if I could handle honesty when I first accepted this job. This is me being honest. I'm terrified. But I'm also tired of being someone who things happen to. I want to be someone who makes things happen, even if that's scary. Adrian's expression softened slightly. You already are that person. You just didn't realize it until now. The next 2 days were a controlled storm of preparation. Marcus worked around the clock creating the duplicate files, thousands of documents, emails, financial records, all carefully crafted to look authentic while containing hidden markers that would trace anyone who accessed them. He embedded metadata that would ping their servers every time a file was opened, creating a map of Dalton's entire network. Catherine built a comprehensive profile of James Holloway's current operations, identifying his business partners, financial backers, and the legitimate enterprises he was using to rebuild his empire. She found connections to real estate developers, investment firms, and several city council members who were accepting campaign contributions from his shell companies. Diana arranged security for the handoff, a location they controlled, backup teams positioned strategically, equipment to monitor and record everything. She ran Lena through protocols for different scenarios, teaching her how to spot surveillance, how to communicate in coded phrases, how to protect herself if things went wrong. And Adrian orchestrated it all, connecting pieces like a chess master seeing moves ahead. He met with contacts, called in favors, ensured that when Dalton made his move, they'd be ready to counter it completely. Lena spent those 2 days split between preparation and visiting her mother. The contrast was jarring, sitting in war room planning sessions where they discussed surveillance and betrayal, then walking into her mother's hospital room where the biggest concern was whether the new treatment was reducing her tumor markers. You seem distracted, sweetheart, her mother said during one visit, studying Lena's face with that maternal insight that saw through every wall. Is everything all right at the new job? Just a complex project, Lena said, which was technically true. High stakes, lots of moving pieces. Your boss must trust you a great deal to give you so much responsibility so quickly. Lena thought about Adrian showing her his journal, about him listening through a wire as she met with Dalton, about the way he'd asked if she could handle the risk before involving her in this plan. He does. I'm still not sure why, but he does. Maybe he sees something in you that you haven't seen in yourself yet. Her mother reached for her hand. You've spent so long trying to be invisible, trying not to burden anyone. But you're capable of so much more than survival, Lena. You always have been. The words settled over Lena like a benediction and a challenge. She'd spent years making herself small, forgettable, unnoticed. Now she was being asked to step into the light in the most dangerous way possible, by pretending to betray the one person who'd actually seen her. On the evening before her deadline with Dalton, Adrian called her to his office. The sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, and he stood silhouetted against it like a figure from a painting. Tomorrow changes everything, he signed when she entered. Are you ready? As ready as I can be. Marcus walked me through the files. I know what to say about them. How to present them is valuable. That's not what I meant. Adrian gestured for her to join him at the windows. Once you hand those files to Dalton, he'll believe you've betrayed me. My organization will believe it too. I'll have to sell the deception to my own people to make it convincing, which means for a period of time, you'll be truly alone. Can you handle that? Lena hadn't considered this aspect. How long? 3 days, maybe 4. Long enough for Dalton to verify the files seem authentic and start sharing them with his network. Long enough for us to trace every connection. During that time, you'll have to maintain the fiction that you're Dalton's asset. What if your people try to retaliate? If they think I betrayed you, they won't touch you. I'll make it clear you're to be left alone while I determine the extent of the damage, but you'll feel the isolation, the looks, the whispers, the knowledge that people you've worked with think you're a traitor. And after, when the truth comes out, Adrian was quiet for a moment. That depends on what we find. If this plan works the way I expect, Dalton and Holloway will be finished. But there may be collateral damage, people connected to them who get caught in the fallout. Are you prepared for that? You mean, am I prepared to help destroy people's lives? I mean, are you prepared to accept that sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to eliminate threats completely? No mercy, no second chances. Lena looked out at the city, at the thousands of lights representing thousands of lives, most of them unaware that people like Adrian and Holloway were playing games that could affect them all. She thought about her brother, about the quiet strength he'd shown navigating a world that wasn't built for him, about her mother, fighting for life with every treatment, about courage being rarer than skill. Yes, she signed, I'm prepared, because the alternative is letting people like Holloway win, and I've seen what that looks like. Good. Adrian pulled out his phone, typing quickly. Then let's review the plan one final time. Tomorrow at noon, you'll call Dalton and tell him you're ready to provide information. You'll set the meeting for tomorrow evening at the Riverside Hotel, neutral ground, public enough to seem safe. You'll bring a sample of the files on a USB drive, proof that you have access to my records. And he'll bring proof of protection for me and my mother, which will be fake, but convincingly so. He'll show you documentation of a witness protection arrangement, maybe even introduce you to someone posing as a federal marshal. Accept it all at face value. Act relieved, grateful, scared, but committed. What about the full transfer of files? You tell him you need 48 hours to copy everything without triggering security systems. You're being careful, methodical, exactly what someone genuinely betraying me would do. That delay gives us time to monitor his initial use of the sample files, to track who he shares them with. And when I provide the complete files, we'll have mapped his entire network. Everyone he reports to, everyone he shares information with, every connection to Holloway. Then we move. Adrian's hands moved with cold precision, simultaneously across every front. Legal action against Holloway's shell companies. Evidence of Dalton's fabricated federal documents sent to actual federal authorities, public exposure of everyone involved, complete and total destruction. Lena felt the weight of what they were planning. People will lose everything. People who tried to destroy me will lose everything. There's a difference. Adrian studied her face. Do you think I'm wrong? To respond with overwhelming force? I think you're protecting what you built, and everyone who depends on it. That's diplomatic. What do you really think? Lena considered her answer carefully. I think you exist in a world where showing weakness invites destruction. I think you've learned that the only way to survive is to be more ruthless than your enemies. And I think that makes you effective. But it also makes you lonely. Something flickered across Adrian's expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. You see clearly. That's dangerous and valuable in equal measure. Is that why you trust me with this? I trust you because you had every reason to accept Dalton's offer when he first approached you. You were desperate, scared, new to my organization with no loyalty yet established, but you came to me instead. That kind of integrity is rare in my world, worth protecting, worth investing in. And after this is over? After Dalton and Holloway are dealt with? Adrian moved closer, his expression serious. After this, you'll understand my world completely. The good parts and the ugly parts, the power and the cost. You'll have a choice to make about whether you want to stay in it. No pressure, no obligation. But if you do stay, it will be with full knowledge of what that means. What if I can't handle it? What if I see how you destroy Holloway and decide it's too much? Then I'll provide you with a generous severance, continued medical coverage for your mother, and we'll part ways professionally. No hard feelings, no retaliation. You've earned that much through what you're about to do. Lena studied his face, seeing the absolute sincerity there. You mean that? You'd really just let me walk away? I don't keep people who don't want to be kept. Loyalty under duress isn't loyalty. It's just fear with better packaging. The next morning arrived too quickly. Lena woke in her apartment feeling like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump without knowing what waited below. She dressed carefully, professional but not too formal, someone making a difficult choice but trying to maintain dignity. Diana picked her up at 10, driving in silence to the harbor building. The team was assembled in Adrian's office, final preparations being made. Marcus handed her the USB drive containing the sample files, walking her through exactly what was on it and how to present it. "These are real documents mixed with fabrications," he explained. "Enough authentic material to convince Dalton the rest is legitimate, but nothing that could actually harm Adrian if it got out. The fabrications are our tracking mechanisms. Every time someone opens these files, we'll know where, when, and from what device." Catherine provided her with talking points, phrases that would make her sound genuine. "Emphasize your fear, your guilt, your desperation to protect your mother. Those emotions are real. Use them. Make Dalton believe he's rescuing you from a monster." Adrian stood apart, watching the preparations with his characteristic stillness. When the others finished their briefings, he signed to Lena. "Remember, once you walk out of here today, I'm going to tell my team you've betrayed me. They'll believe it because they trust my judgment. That's the price of making this convincing." "I understand. Do you need anything before you make the call? Time to reconsider? A chance to back out?" "No. Let's finish this." At exactly noon, Lena dialed Dalton's number from her personal phone. He answered immediately, his voice warm with anticipation. "Ms. Carter, I've been hoping to hear from you. I've thought about what you showed me, about the risks I'm taking working for Mr. Voss." Lena kept her voice shaky, uncertain. "I want protection for myself and my mother. I want guarantees in writing before I provide anything." "Of course. That's completely reasonable. When can we meet?" "Tonight, 7 p.m., the Riverside Hotel lobby. It's public, neutral. I'll feel safer there." "Perfect. I'll bring documentation of the protection arrangement." "And Ms. Carter, you're making the right choice. This man has destroyed enough lives. It's time someone stopped him." "I hope you're right," Lena said, meaning it in ways Dalton couldn't understand. "I'll see you tonight." She ended the call and looked at Adrian. "It's done. He believes me." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "Then we proceed. Diana, I want full surveillance at the Riverside. Marcus, monitor the files the moment they're opened. Catherine, have legal standing by in case we need immediate action." Everyone moved to their tasks, leaving Lena alone with Adrian. He studied her for a long moment, then signed, "Thank you for trusting me. I know this is asking a great deal. You've given me more in 1 week than most people have in my entire life. This is me repaying that. This is you stepping into darkness to protect something you barely understand. That's not repayment. It's courage." He paused, then, "When this is over, I want you to take 3 days off. Visit your mother, sleep in your own bed, remember what normal feels like. You'll need that before deciding whether to return." "You really think I might not come back?" "I think you might see me destroy 2 men's lives tonight and tomorrow and realize I'm exactly the monster Dalton claimed I was. I want you to have the space to process that honestly." Lena wanted to argue, to insist she understood what she was signing up for. But the truth was, she didn't know how she'd feel watching Adrian's plan unfold. Didn't know if she had the stomach for the kind of ruthless efficiency he operated with. "All right," she said. 3 days. After. The hours until 7 p.m. crawled past. Lena tried to rest but couldn't, her mind running through every possible scenario. At 6, Diana came to collect her, helping her prepare for the meeting. The wire was smaller this time, virtually undetectable, broadcasting to equipment Marcus had positioned throughout the Riverside Hotel. "We'll hear everything," Diana assured her, "and I'll be in the lobby reading a magazine. If anything feels wrong, use the code phrase. I'll have you out in under 20 seconds." The drive to the Riverside felt like traveling to an execution, her own or someone else's, she wasn't sure. The hotel was upscale modern, all glass and chrome, with a lobby that managed to feel both spacious and intimate. Lena spotted Catherine immediately, checking her phone near the elevators. Marcus would be nearby too, though she couldn't identify him. Dalton arrived 5 minutes early, carrying a leather briefcase, his expression carefully crafted into concern and reassurance. He stood when he saw Lena, gesturing to a seating area away from the main traffic flow. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult. Lena sat, clutching her purse where the USB drive waited. I haven't slept in 2 days. I keep thinking about what happens if he finds out. He won't. We're very good at protecting our assets. Here. Dalton opened his briefcase, pulling out official-looking documents. This is a federal witness protection agreement. Once you sign this and provide the information we discussed, you and your mother will be relocated to a secure facility. New identities, continued medical care, financial support. You'll be completely safe. Lena took the documents with shaking hands, scanning them. They looked legitimate. Proper seals, correct legal language, signatures from people whose titles suggested authority. If she didn't know they were fake, she'd have believed them completely. And you're certain this will protect us? From Mr. Voss and whoever else might retaliate? Absolutely. We've done this hundreds of times. No one protected under this program has ever been successfully located by hostile parties. Because the program doesn't exist, Lena thought. But she made herself look relieved, grateful, desperate for this lifeline to be real. I brought a sample, she said, pulling out the USB drive. Files showing his leverage network, financial records, communications with various contacts. It's not everything, but it's enough to prove I have access. Dalton took the drive like it was precious metal. This is perfect. How much more can you provide? Everything. His complete records going back 10 years, but I need time. He has security systems, monitoring software. If I copy everything at once, it will trigger alerts. I need to do this carefully, in pieces. How long? 48 hours. I can have everything compiled by then. Dalton nodded, clearly pleased. That's acceptable. We'll set up another meeting for the full transfer. And Ms. Carter, I want you to know you're doing the right thing. Adrian Voss has hurt a lot of people. You're helping ensure he faces justice. Lena made herself look conflicted, guilty, scared. I just want my mother safe. Whatever else he's done, that's not my concern. Of course, family comes first, always. Dalton stood, extending his hand. I'll be in touch about the next meeting. In the meantime, act normally. Don't give him any reason to suspect. They shook hands, and Dalton left, the USB drive in his pocket. Lena sat there for 5 minutes, her heart pounding, before Diana appeared beside her. You did perfectly, Diana murmured. Let's get you out of here. Back at the harbor building, the team was assembled around Marcus's workstation, watching data stream across multiple screens. Marcus looked up when they entered, his expression triumphant. He opened the drive 17 minutes ago, from a laptop in what appears to be a hotel room downtown. He's already copied 3 files to his cloud storage and sent encrypted messages to 2 different contacts. Can you trace the contacts? Catherine asked. Already on it. One appears to be an attorney specializing in corporate litigation. The other is a journalist who's written extensively about political corruption. Marcus pulled up more data. He's building a case for public exposure, not just blackmail. Adrian signed, Holloway wants me destroyed publicly. He wants everyone to know who brought me down. His expression was cold, calculating. Good. That makes him predictable. Over the next 48 hours, they watched Dalton's network unfold like a map being revealed. Every time someone accessed the files, Marcus's software captured it. Locations, devices, user identities. They traced connections to Holloway's shell companies, to journalists, to lawyers, to investigators who'd been hired to build cases against Adrian's legitimate businesses. It was comprehensive, meticulous, and exactly what Adrian had anticipated. During that time, Lena played her role perfectly. She went to work at Adrian's office, acted nervous around his staff, avoided eye contact with him in meetings. Word spread quickly. Marcus mentioned it to another employee in hearing range, and within hours, everyone knew Adrian's new assistant had been caught providing information to external parties. The looks she received were exactly what Adrian had predicted. Hostility, contempt, barely concealed anger. People she'd worked alongside for days now treated her like a disease. Diana was the only one who acknowledged her at all, and even that was minimal, professional, cold. Lena felt the isolation acutely. Even knowing it was theater, knowing the truth would eventually emerge, the experience of being treated as a traitor was excruciating. She understood suddenly what Adrian had meant about loneliness. This was what betrayal felt like from the inside, and she hadn't even actually betrayed anyone. On the third evening, Adrian called her to his office. His expression was harder than she'd ever seen it, and for a moment she wondered if he'd somehow forgotten this was staged. Then his hands moved. It's time. We have everything we need. Tomorrow morning, we execute the final phase. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, Holloway and Dalton discover their plan has failed spectacularly. Tomorrow, everyone they've involved in this scheme learns they've been played. And tomorrow, you become either someone who can live with what we're about to do, or someone who can't. Lena met his eyes, seeing the predator beneath the sophisticated exterior. Show me. I need to see what justice looks like in your world. Adrian's smile was razor sharp. As you wish. The operation began at dawn, before the city fully woke, when the streets were still quiet and the harbor building stood like a sentinel against the breaking sky. Lena arrived to find Adrian's office transformed into a war room, Catherine coordinating with lawyers on 3 different video calls, Marcus's screens displaying real-time data feeds, Diana reviewing tactical positions with her security team. The air hummed with controlled intensity, everyone moving with the precision of people who knew exactly what was about to happen. Adrian stood at the center of it all, orchestrating chaos into symphony. When Lena entered, he turned, his hands moving. Good. You're here. Watch carefully. This is how empires fall. Catherine ended one of her calls and looked up. Federal prosecutors have the evidence package. Dalton's fabricated documents, his real identity, records of Meridian Strategic's payments to him, everything. They're moving within the hour. And the journalists, Adrian signed. 3 major outlets have the story. Holloway's shell companies, his connection to the development fraud 5 years ago, evidence that he's been using Meridian to conduct corporate espionage. All verified, all sourced to documents Dalton himself distributed. Catherine's smile was sharp. He built the case against his own employer. Marcus looked up from his screens. Dalton just accessed the files again. He's in a panic. I can see him trying to verify metadata, checking digital signatures. He knows something's wrong. Let him panic, Adrian signed. What about Holloway's business partners? Receiving very interesting phone calls as we speak, Catherine said. Turns out when you present people with evidence that their business associate has been conducting illegal surveillance operations, they tend to distance themselves quickly. 3 of his major investors have already withdrawn funding. 2 more are threatening legal action. Lena watched it unfold with a mixture of awe and discomfort. This was power operating at its highest level. Not violence, not threats, just information deployed with surgical precision. Adrian had found every pressure point in Holloway's reconstructed empire and pressed them all simultaneously. The city council members? Adrian asked. Their campaign finance records are being reviewed by the ethics committee. Anonymous tips, of course, but thoroughly documented. All those contributions from Holloway's shell companies are now public record. Catherine pulled up a news feed on one of the screens. It's already making morning headlines. Adrian moved to the windows, looking out over the city as it began to wake. Lena joined him, and he signed without taking his eyes off the view. Do you understand what you're watching? This is what happens when you try to destroy someone who's built their power on information. Every weapon Holloway tried to use against me, I've turned back on him. Every connection Dalton made while investigating me became a vulnerability I could exploit. It's comprehensive, Lena said quietly. Complete. It has to be. Half measures invite retaliation. If I'm going to end this threat, I have to remove every possible avenue for comeback. He turned to face her. Does that disturb you? Lena considered the question honestly. Yes and no. It disturbs me that this is necessary, that your world operates at this level of brutality. But it doesn't disturb me that you're protecting yourself and everyone who depends on you, including me. You're adapting quickly to moral complexity. That's either impressive or concerning. Maybe both. Adrian's expression softened slightly. You should know what we've done to Holloway and Dalton, they attempted to do to me. The fabricated evidence, the systematic dismantling, the public exposure. The only difference is we succeeded where they failed. Because you were smarter. Because I had better information. And because I had someone brave enough to walk into danger without knowing if I'd be there to catch her. His hands moved with something that might have been gratitude. Thank you, Lena, for trusting me with this. Before she could respond, Marcus called out, Adrian, you need to see this. They gathered around his workstation, where he'd pulled up a video feed, security camera footage from a downtown hotel. The timestamp showed 20 minutes ago, and the image showed Dalton being escorted from his room by federal agents. His expression was one of complete shock, the reality of his situation clearly just hitting him. He's being charged with fabricating federal documents, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit fraud, Marcus explained. The evidence package Catherine sent was airtight. His attorney's already talking about plea deals. Will he give up Holloway? Lena asked. He already has, Catherine said, pulling up a transcript. Started talking the moment they read him his rights. Confirmed everything. The payments from Meridian Strategic, Holloway's personal involvement in planning the operation, the fabricated evidence he was instructed to create. He's trying to trade testimony for a reduced sentence. Adrian studied the transcript, his expression unreadable. Then he signed. Make sure the prosecutors know I'm willing to testify if needed. I want this case ironclad. Already done, Catherine confirmed. Over the next 3 hours, Lena watched Holloway's world collapse in real time. News outlets ran stories about the development fraud, both past and present. Business partners issued statements distancing themselves from Meridian Strategic. Investors pulled funding so quickly, the company's accounts were frozen by noon. And through it all, Marcus tracked the digital signatures on the files they'd fed Dalton, creating a map of everyone who'd been complicit in the scheme. By early afternoon, it was over. Holloway's empire, the one he'd spent 5 years rebuilding, was destroyed. Meridian Strategic was shuttered, its assets seized pending investigation. Dalton was facing 15 years in federal prison, and every journalist and attorney who'd accepted information from him was now scrambling to explain their involvement. Adrian called the team together in the conference room, his expression carrying the weight of what they'd accomplished. Well done, he signed to the assembled group. All of you. This operation required precision, coordination, and absolute discretion. You delivered on every level. What happens now? Diana asked. Now we wait for the legal process to play out. Catherine will monitor the prosecution's case, ensure they have everything they need. Marcus will maintain surveillance on anyone who might attempt retaliation. Diana, I want security protocols elevated for the next month. Anyone associated with Holloway who might feel motivated to strike back. And Lena? Catherine asked, looking at her with newfound respect. Her role in this should be recognized. Adrian's hands moved slowly, deliberately. Lena's role was extraordinary. She walked into a situation that could have gotten her killed and executed perfectly. She earned her place in this organization several times over. He turned to her directly, which is why I'm offering you a choice. Stay and become part of my inner circle, with all the benefits and burdens that entails. Or take the severance package we discussed, continue your mother's medical coverage, and walk away from this world entirely. No judgment, either way. The room fell silent. Everyone was looking at her now, waiting to see what she'd choose. Lena felt the weight of the decision, understanding that this moment would define everything that came after. Can I have those 3 days you mentioned? She asked. To think about it properly? Of course. Take a week if you need it. This isn't a decision to make lightly. The team dispersed, returning to their various tasks of monitoring and damage control. Adrian remained in the conference room, and Lena found herself alone with him for the first time since the operation began. You look exhausted, he signed. I am, but also relieved. And confused. And about a dozen other things I can't quite name. That's normal. You've just participated in destroying 2 men's lives. That should affect you. Does it affect you? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Every time. People think I'm cold, that I operate without feeling, but the truth is I feel everything. I just don't let those feelings change what needs to be done. Holloway tried to destroy me, tried to use you as a weapon against me. I responded proportionally, by annihilating him completely. By ensuring he can never threaten me or mine again. There's a difference. Adrian moved to the windows, his familiar position when thinking. In my world, mercy is often mistaken for weakness. If I'd simply exposed Holloway's plan and walked away, he'd have tried again. And again, until one attempt succeeded. I can't afford that risk, not for myself and not for the people who depend on me. Like me. Like you. And Diana, Marcus, Catherine, everyone else in this building who's chosen to work for me. I take that responsibility seriously. Lena joined him at the window, looking out over the city that had become so different from the one she'd known just a week ago. What happens to the people Holloway employed? The ones who weren't involved in the scheme against you? Catherine's already arranging severance packages and job placement assistance. They were following orders from a corrupt employer. They don't deserve to suffer for his choices. You're not the monster Dalton claimed you were. I'm not a saint either. I exist in the space between, doing what's necessary to protect what matters. He turned to face her. Which is why I need you to truly consider this choice. If you stay, you'll see more of what we did today. Not the same circumstances, but the same level of calculated action. You'll be complicit in decisions that exist in moral gray areas, and you'll have to live with that. And if I go, then you'll have saved your mother's life and escaped before getting pulled too deep into my world. That's a good outcome, a clean outcome. Lena studied his face, seeing the genuine care beneath the calculated exterior. What do you want me to do? I want you to choose what's right for you, not what you think I want to hear. This only works if you're here because you want to be, not because you feel obligated. That's not an answer. Adrian's smile was slight but real. No, it's not. But it's the only one I can give you honestly. This decision is yours alone. Diana drove Lena home that evening, the city lights blurring past the windows. They rode in silence until Diana pulled up outside Lena's apartment building. For what it's worth, Diana said as Lena prepared to exit, you handled yourself like someone who's been doing this for years, not days. Whatever you decide, you should be proud of that. How do you do it? Lena asked. How do you live with the things Adrian asks you to do? Diana considered the question carefully. I don't work for Adrian because I'm afraid of him or because he pays well, though both are true. I work for him because he's never asked me to do something that violated my core principles. Everything exists in legal gray areas, yes, but it's never crossed lines I'm not willing to cross. The day that changes is the day I leave. And you trust him to honor that? Completely. Adrian's many things, but he's not a liar. If I said I was uncomfortable with an assignment, he'd find another way or another person. That's rare in our world. Diana met her eyes in the rearview mirror. The question you need to answer is whether you have lines you're not willing to cross, and whether what you've seen Adrian do falls within your boundaries. Lena spent that night awake in her apartment, replaying everything that had happened. She thought about the moment she'd signed to Adrian in that restaurant, breaking through his isolation. Thought about Davidson's fabricated evidence and the fear it had inspired. Thought about watching Holloway's empire collapse in real time, knowing she'd helped make it happen. Thought about her mother, safe at St. Catherine's, receiving treatment that was actually working. The next morning, she visited the hospital. Her mother was sitting up in bed, reading a book, looking healthier than she had in months. Dr. Chen had been in earlier with new scan results. The tumor was shrinking. The treatment was working. Sweetheart? Her mother's face lit up when Lena entered. I wasn't expecting you this early. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I just needed to see you. Come, sit. Her mother patted the bed beside her. You look troubled. What's happening? Lena sat, taking her mother's hand, drawing strength from that familiar touch. The job I took, it's more complicated than I initially thought. My boss operates in spaces that aren't exactly black and white, and I'm being offered a permanent position in his organization, but I'm not sure if I should take it. Because the work is morally ambiguous? Because I'm not sure who I'll become if I stay. A week ago, I was invisible, serving champagne, trying to disappear. Now I'm involved in things I never imagined. And I liked it, Mom. The feeling of mattering, of being seen, of having power instead of just surviving. That scares me. Her mother was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with that maternal insight that saw through everything. Let me tell you something about your brother. When he was 12, he told me he'd decided to become a teacher for deaf children. I asked him why, and he said it was because he'd spent his whole life learning to exist in a world that wasn't built for him, and he wanted to help other kids do the same. But he also said he was scared that by focusing only on the deaf community, he'd be limiting himself, making himself smaller than he could be. What did you tell him? I told him that we all have to decide whether we want to fit into the world as it exists or reshape it into something better. Both are valid choices. Both require courage. The question is which one feels true to who you are. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. I miss him so much. I know, sweetheart. I do too. Her mother squeezed her hand. But he'd be proud of you, proud that you're not just surviving anymore, that you're choosing a path that scares you because it means something. That's not losing yourself, that's finding yourself. Even if the path is morally complicated? Especially then. Easy choices don't teach us who we are. Difficult ones do. Her mother smiled. And from what you've told me, your boss values honesty and courage. Those are good foundations for any relationship, professional or otherwise. Lena stayed for another hour, talking about treatment and recovery and the future that was starting to look possible again. When she finally left, she felt clarity settling over her like a cloak. Not certainty, but understanding of what she needed to do. She called Adrian from the hospital parking lot. He answered immediately. "How are you?" he asked, his rough voice carrying genuine concern. "Tired, thoughtful, ready to give you my answer." "And what is it?" "I'm staying, but I have conditions." A pause. "I'm listening. I want to continue developing my role beyond just communication and translation. I want to learn how your organization works at every level, legal, strategic, operational. I want to be someone who adds value beyond being able to sign." "Agreed. You've already proven you can do that. What else?" "I want regular check-ins about assignments. If you ask me to do something that crosses my personal boundaries, I want the freedom to say no without consequences. And I want the same promise you made Diana, that if the work ever conflicts with my core principles, I can walk away. You have my word on all of that. Anything else?" Lena took a breath. "I want you to be honest with me about the ugly parts of this world. Don't shelter me or try to protect me from the reality of what we do. If I'm going to live with these choices, I need to make them with full knowledge." That's a hard thing to ask for. Once you see some things, you can't unsee them. "I know, but I'd rather live with difficult truths than comfortable lies." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You're sure about this? About staying?" "I'm sure. I've been invisible my whole life. I'm ready to be someone who matters, even if that's complicated." "Then welcome to the inner circle, Lena Carter. Officially this time." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Come to the office tomorrow. We have work to do." The next morning, Lena walked into the harbor building feeling like she was arriving at her real first day. The team greeted her differently now, not as the new assistant, but as someone who'd proven herself under fire. Marcus gave her an enthusiastic high five. Catherine nodded with respect. Diana actually smiled. Adrian was waiting in his office, and when Lena entered, he stood, his expression serious. "Before we move forward, there's something I need to show you," he signed. He pulled out the leather journal she'd seen on her first day, setting it on the desk between them. "You asked for honesty about the ugly parts of this world. This is where it lives. 10 years of deals, leverage, information acquisition. Some of it you'll find acceptable. Some of it will disturb you. But if you're going to be part of my inner circle, you need to understand the foundation we're building on." Lena picked up the journal, feeling its weight. "You're giving me access to the thing that could destroy you? I'm giving you the trust I'd give any member of my core team. You've earned it. What you do with it determines everything that comes after." She opened the journal, scanning the first few pages. Detailed records of negotiations, carefully documented leverage points, information about people and organizations that could shift the balance of power. Some of it was exactly what she'd expected. Business intelligence, strategic planning, calculated risk assessment. But some of it walked lines she hadn't anticipated. "This deal here," she signed, pointing to an entry from 3 years ago. "You helped someone avoid a fraud investigation by providing information about a prosecutor's personal life." "I did. The person facing investigation was innocent. The charges were politically motivated. The prosecutor had accepted bribes from the actual guilty party. I exposed that corruption and saved someone from undeserved prison time." "But you used personal information as leverage. That prosecutor lost their career." "That prosecutor was corrupt and deserved to lose their career. Would you rather I let an innocent person be imprisoned?" Lena absorbed this, understanding the moral calculation involved. "There's no clean answer, is there? No way to do the right thing without someone getting hurt." "Not in my world. Every choice has costs. The question is whether those costs are justified by the outcome." Adrian moved to sit across from her. "That's what I need you to understand. If you stay, you'll be part of decisions like that. Choices that exist in gray areas where righteousness isn't clear-cut. Can you live with that?" Lena thought about her brother, about the conversations they'd had in silence about justice and fairness, thought about her mother fighting for life while insurance companies tried to deny coverage, thought about systems that claimed to be fair but failed people constantly. I think I've been living in those gray areas my whole life, she said. I just didn't have the power to do anything about them. Now I do. And I'd rather use that power trying to make things better, even imperfectly, than stay invisible and pretend the gray areas don't exist. Adrian's expression softened into something that might have been relief. Then we understand each other. Good. He stood, moving to his desk and pulling out a folder. Your first official assignment as part of the inner circle. Remember Thomas Chen and his shipping problem? The investigation into his import operations. Marcus traced the source of that investigation. It's not federal. It's a competitor trying to force Chen out of the market by creating regulatory headaches. The competitor has been feeding false information to customs officials, making it look like Chen's involved in smuggling when he's actually running a legitimate operation. What do you need me to do? Chen is meeting with the customs officials tomorrow to address their concerns. I want you there as my representative. Your job is to observe the meeting, assess whether Chen is being truthful, and help me determine whether to protect him or let him face consequences. You're asking me to judge whether someone deserves your help. I'm asking you to use that clarity of observation you've demonstrated. Chen trusts me, but I don't fully trust him yet. You're removed enough from our history to see him objectively. Can you do that? Lena thought about the responsibility being placed on her shoulders. Someone's business fate hanging on her assessment. It was daunting and exhilarating in equal measure. Yes, she said, I can do that. The meeting with customs officials took place in a federal building downtown, all fluorescent lighting and government-issue furniture. Chen looked nervous but determined, his attorney beside him as they faced 3 customs investigators who clearly believed they'd caught someone in criminal activity. Lena sat in the corner, Adrian's silent representative, watching body language and listening to tone as much as words. Chen answered every question directly, provided documentation for every shipment, explained his business operations with transparent detail. His nervousness came from being accused of crimes he hadn't committed, not from hiding guilt. The competitors' accusations fell apart under scrutiny. False manifests they'd provided didn't match actual cargo records. Dates they'd claimed suspicious activity occurred. Chen had been out of the country. The whole investigation was a house of cards built on fabricated evidence. By the end of the 2-hour meeting, the customs officials were apologizing, promising to investigate who'd fed them false information. Chen left looking relieved but exhausted. Lena met with Adrian that evening to deliver her assessment. He's innocent. Everything he said checked out. The competitor was trying to destroy him through regulatory warfare. Your recommendation? Help him. Not just because he's innocent, but because the competitor needs to understand that attacking people under your protection has consequences. Adrian's smile was approving. Exactly what I was thinking. Catherine's already preparing legal action against the competitor for filing false reports with federal agencies. It should be educational. Over the following weeks, Lena settled into her new role with growing confidence. She attended meetings with Adrian, learning to read people in situations the way he did. She worked with Catherine on strategic planning, understanding how legal and illegal pressures could be applied in concert. She trained with Marcus on information systems, learning to find and protect valuable data. And she spent time with Diana, understanding security protocols and threat assessment. Her mother's health continued to improve, the treatments working better than anyone had hoped. Doctor. Chen was cautiously optimistic about full remission within 6 months. Lena visited regularly, and each time her mother looked stronger, more alive, more like herself. You look different, her mother said during one visit, studying Lena's face. Confident. Like you've finally found where you belong. I think I have, Lena admitted. It's not what I expected my life to become, but it feels right. Important. And your boss? The one you were uncertain about? He's complicated, brilliant and ruthless and surprisingly kind. He sees people clearly, including me, and he's given me opportunities I never imagined. Her mother smiled knowingly. You care about him. I can hear it in your voice when you mention him. Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks. It's professional. He's my employer. Of course, sweetheart. Of course. But her mother's smile suggested she heard something Lena wasn't ready to admit yet. 3 months after Lena joined Adrian's inner circle, Holloway's trial concluded. He was convicted on multiple counts of corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole before 5. Dalton had already pleaded guilty and was serving 12 years, his testimony against Holloway ensuring both their destructions were complete. Adrian watched the verdict come in from his office, Lena beside him. When the announcement was made, he simply nodded, satisfied but not celebratory. "It's finished," he signed. "That threat is eliminated completely." "Do you feel vindicated?" "I feel relieved. Holloway spent 5 years planning revenge, and I spent 3 days dismantling it. The asymmetry says everything about who understood power better." "Does it bother you that he'll spend the next years in prison because of what we did?" Adrian considered the question seriously. "It bothers me that it was necessary, but I don't regret the outcome. He made choices that put him on this path. I simply ensured those choices had consequences." That evening, Adrian took Lena to dinner at Élysée, the restaurant where everything had begun. They sat in one of the private rooms upstairs, the same one where she'd first signed to him, changing both their lives. "This feels symbolic," Lena signed as they settled into their seats. "It is. I wanted to mark the occasion of you completing your first 3 months. You've exceeded every expectation I had." "You have high expectations." "I do. And you've met them all." Adrian gestured to the champagne already waiting, the same Krug she'd served that first night. To new beginnings and courage that changed everything. They touched glasses, and Lena felt the weight of how far she'd come. From invisible waitress to trusted advisor, from desperate and drowning to powerful and purposeful. The transformation was so complete she barely recognized her former self. "Can I ask you something personal?" she signed. "Always. That first night when I signed to you, did you know immediately that you wanted to hire me, or was it a calculation?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Both. I saw someone brave enough to communicate when everyone else was afraid to try. That's rare and valuable. But I also saw someone desperate enough that I could offer a solution they couldn't refuse. The calculation and the genuine appreciation happened simultaneously. And now? Is it still calculation? Now it's trust. You've proven yourself in ways I couldn't have predicted. You've become essential to how I operate, someone I rely on completely." He paused. "You've also become someone I value beyond your professional contributions. That's dangerous in my world, but I've decided the risk is worth it." Lena's heart skipped. Dangerous how? Because caring about people creates vulnerabilities that enemies can exploit. Diana, Marcus, Catherine. I protect them fiercely because they matter to me. But with you, it's different, more complicated. Why? Adrian's hands moved slowly, carefully. Because you see all of me. The brilliant strategist and the lonely man who communicates in silence. The ruthless protector and the person who wants connection. You don't flinch from either version. That kind of acceptance is intoxicating and terrifying. Lena felt her breath catch. "Adrian, you don't have to respond. I'm simply being honest, as you requested. You've changed my world in ways I'm still processing. But whatever develops between us, professionally or personally, will happen at a pace you're comfortable with. No pressure, no expectations." They finished dinner in contemplative silence, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between them. When Diana drove Lena home that night, she found herself thinking not about the work or the danger or the moral complexities, but about the way Adrian had looked at her when he admitted she mattered. 6 months into her role, Lena stood in Adrian's office, looking out over the city she'd once moved through, invisible, and felt truly at home for the first time in years. Her mother was in remission, healthy enough that they were discussing her moving to an assisted living facility with gardens and activities instead of hospital walls. The work was challenging and engaging, pushing her to grow in ways she'd never imagined. And the team had become something like family, dysfunctional and dangerous, but fiercely loyal. Adrian joined her at the window, standing close enough that she could feel his presence. He signed, "You look content." "I am. I've been thinking about something my brother used to say. That communication isn't just about the words you use, but about being willing to connect across distances. I spent so long isolated, building walls to protect myself. Now I'm tearing them down. And how does that feel?" "Terrifying and wonderful. Like I'm finally living instead of just surviving. Adrian's expression softened. You've taught me something important over these months. I've spent years building an empire in silence, using isolation as both shield and weapon. But you've shown me that true power comes from connection, not just control, from trusting people instead of just calculating their usefulness. You trusted people before me. Diana, Marcus, Catherine. I relied on them professionally, but I didn't let them see the whole truth of who I am. You. I've let past all the defenses. That's different. Lena turned to face him fully. Why me? Because that first night you chose courage over caution. You saw someone isolated and reached out even though it scared you. That kind of genuine humanity is rare in my world. It's changed me, made me want to be more than just the untouchable strategist everyone fears. And what do you want to be? Adrian's hands moved with unusual hesitation, as if the signs themselves were difficult. Someone worthy of the trust you've placed in me. Someone who deserves to have you in his life, not just his organization. Lena felt her heart racing, understanding finally breaking through. Adrian, are you saying... I'm saying that somewhere between that first night and now, you stopped being just my translator or my advisor. You became someone I can't imagine my life without, someone who makes the silence less lonely. He paused, then, I'm asking if you feel the same. Lena thought about the past 6 months, about how Adrian had challenged and protected and believed in her, about the way her pulse jumped when he entered a room, the way she found herself looking for his approval, the way conversations with him felt more real than anything else in her life. Yes, she signed, her hands steady despite the emotion flooding through her. I feel the same. I think I have for a while now. I just didn't know if it was appropriate given our professional relationship. Nothing about our relationship has been conventional from the start. Why start now? Adrian stepped closer, his expression open in a way she'd never seen before. He raised one hand, signing, May I? Lena nodded, and he cupped her face gently, his touch warm and certain. When he kissed her, it was soft at first, tentative, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. Then deeper, more assured, a claim and a promise, all at once. When they broke apart, Lena was breathless, her world realigned around this new reality. What happens now? Now we figure this out together. The work continues, but the foundation changes. We build something that's both professional and personal, understanding that in my world, those lines blur anyway. Your enemies will see me as an even bigger target. They will. But they'll also understand that touching you means facing my full wrath. I protect what's mine, Lena, and you're mine now if you choose to be. I choose to be, but on one condition. Name it. You're mine too. This goes both ways. I protect you just as fiercely as you protect me. Adrian's smile was genuine, transforming his entire face. Deal. Though I should warn you, I'm very difficult to protect. Good thing I'm a quick learner. Over the following months, their relationship evolved into something neither had anticipated but both needed. Adrian taught Lena the intricacies of his empire, sharing not just the strategy but the philosophy behind it. She learned when to show mercy and when to strike without hesitation, when to negotiate and when to walk away, when to trust and when to verify everything twice. In turn, Lena brought humanity into Adrian's carefully controlled world. She challenged his decisions when they seemed too harsh, reminded him that people were more than just assets or threats, and helped him build connections that went beyond simple utility. Under her influence, Adrian's organization began focusing not just on accumulating power, but on using it to create actual positive change. They established a foundation to help families facing medical bankruptcy, funding treatment for people in situations like Lena had faced. They created job training programs in underserved communities. They used Adrian's information network to expose genuinely corrupt officials and protect vulnerable populations from exploitation. The work remained morally complex, existing in those gray areas where righteousness wasn't clear-cut. But it felt purposeful, like they were building something that mattered beyond just wealth and influence. 1 year after Lena first signed to Adrian in that restaurant, they stood together on the roof of the harbor building, looking out over the city at sunset. Her mother was healthy, living in a beautiful facility where she'd made friends and found purpose volunteering with other cancer survivors. The organization was stronger than ever, having weathered several challenges and emerged more unified. And Lena herself had transformed from invisible waitress to someone whose opinion shaped decisions affecting thousands of lives. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked, his voice rough but warm in the evening air. "Stepping into my world instead of staying safe?" Lena considered the question, thinking about everything she'd experienced, everything she'd learned, everything she'd become. "No, I regret the years I spent invisible, thinking that was all I deserved. But this, us, the work, the complexity and danger and purpose, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even knowing what you know now about what I am, what we do, especially knowing that, because I've learned that the world isn't divided into good people and bad people. It's full of complicated people making difficult choices, trying to protect what matters while navigating systems that don't care about individuals. You taught me that power isn't inherently corrupt. It's what you do with it that defines you." Adrian pulled her close, his arms strong and certain around her. "You've made me better, more human. I spent so long operating in pure calculation that I forgot what it felt like to actually care about outcomes beyond strategic advantage. You reminded me. We've made each other better. That's how this works." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The city spread out below them, full of people living their lives, unaware of the quiet wars being fought in shadows, the deals being made in silence, the power shifting hands through information instead of violence. Lena had entered this world seeking salvation for her mother and found so much more. She'd found purpose, partnership, and a place where her courage actually mattered. She'd discovered that the silence Adrian lived in wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, connection, and possibility. And most importantly, she'd learned that being seen, truly seen by someone who understood both your strength and vulnerability, was worth every risk, every moral complication, every moment of fear. She'd stepped into darkness, trusting that someone would be there to catch her, and found instead that she'd learned to navigate the shadows herself, powerful and purposeful, and finally, after so many years of invisibility, completely and irrevocably alive. The empire they built together wasn't just one of information and influence. It was one of second chances and fierce protection, of using power to shield those who couldn't shield themselves, of making difficult choices in service of outcomes that actually mattered. And in the quiet moments between strategy sessions and calculated moves, in the silence that had once isolated Adrian but now connected them both, Lena and Adrian built something even more valuable than power. They built a future where neither of them had to face the darkness alone.